exciting night. This is a night, the kind of night that our ancestors several hundred years ago would have dreamed to be a part of. And what you and I will participate beginning in 2 weeks in early voting from today and 5 weeks in person is one of the most sacred things that any of us ever do, and that is vote. And tonight, we have the unique opportunity to have all the candidates up here. And I'm excited that everyone has showed up and excited for all the folks watching online. I'd like to especially thank Gail Horton. Because Gail called me a couple months ago and said, you know, we do the Roswell Women's Club political forum every time there's an election. But the last time we did it at First Baptist Church, and we would really like to bring it back to City Hall. So I called Councilmember Hall and Councilmember Beeson and Councilmember Palermo and Councilmember Hills and Councilmember Wardland and said, guys, what do you think? And they said, sounds like a good idea. And then we called our city administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, and said, Randy, you good with this? He said, absolutely, 100%. So thanks to Gail, this forum is being held in City Hall, and let's hope that we keep up that tradition going forward. I would like to take a little personal privilege, because I'm very blessed tonight, to have somebody very special here who I never get to come to public events, and she's going to kill me. But my wife is here, and I'd like to say hi to my wife and introduce her, Stacy Wilson. Where are you, Stacy? Where are you? Say hi. Raise your hand. So, I'd like to introduce you to the chair for the Public Affairs Committee for the Roswell Women's Club. She's been a Roswell resident for 6 years, and has been, for 30 years. And has been a member of the Roswell Women's Club for 6 years. Unfortunately, this poor soul is also from Pittsburgh originally, and a Steelers fan, and has been in very deep remorse lately. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce to you Rosalind Dominic.
Hi, everybody. It's a beautiful fall night in Roswell. I welcome you all to this candidate forum. Roswell Women's Club is so pleased to have this event and to have you here. Let me tell you a little bit about Roswell Women's Club. It is an all-volunteer organization supporting North Fulton community. Last year, we were able to raise $150,000 and give it away to 27 nonprofits. We gave scholarships to 22 graduating seniors, and we gave 32 teacher grants to North Fulton teachers. That's what we do, and we're very proud of that. But we're also interested in educating the community about what's happening here in Roswell, and that's what this event is all about. I want to thank you. I want to do a special thank you to some special people. First of all, Mayor Kurt Wilson. Thank you so much for allowing us to have this event here in City Hall. We really appreciate that. And City Hall employees have been phenomenal, everybody. Particularly Marley Press. I don't know if Marley's here, but she's been my right-hand lady and has been so gracious, helping everything happen when it should. And every other member of City Hall has been great too. Sergeant James Barker, are you here? Here he is. He's been wonderful, helping us. And many others, Lisa Hines, and if I've forgotten some people, I'm sorry, just forgive me for that. But everybody here at City Hall has been wonderful. I'd like to thank the Public Affairs Committee. It's composed of 11 ladies, and they've worked very hard to get this event prepared and ready to go. Especially Sharon Schiffer, my co-chair. Sharon, where are you? There's Sharon Schiffer, co-chair. And thanks to friends and family seated over here who have been patient with me and helped me out. I'd also like to thank the candidates for City Council back here for agreeing to attend. And the people who are focused on maintaining Roswell's historic beauty and move forward at the same time. And Attorney Tyler Mann is here. He will be our moderator. He's graciously agreed to moderate this forum. He's put a lot of personal time into this event and is very willing to support this event. So we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will begin. I will tell you a little more about Tyler, but would you please stand now? And there's the flag over there to your left. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As I mentioned, Attorney Tyler Mann will be our moderator today. Let me tell you a little bit about Tyler. Tyler moved from Alpharetta to Roswell with his family in 1986. He graduated from Roswell High School in 1999. He then received a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering and Political Science from Yale University. He received a law degree from the University of Michigan. He returned to Atlanta and started his career at the law firm Troutman Sanders, then worked in the Georgia State Senate and the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office. Tyler is currently an Assistant United States Attorney in the Violent Crime and National Security section of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Atlanta. And most importantly, he grew up in my neighborhood. And his mom's here. I don't know, where's Linda? Linda Mann, Mom? There she is, okay. So I present to you Tyler Mann, our moderator.
Thank you very much. I will be as brief as I can. Thank you very much, Rosalind. Rosalind Dominic has done just an unbelievable job getting tonight set up. Roswell's so lucky to have the Women's Club. It's such a group of dedicated women who are so interested in the future of Roswell, the culture of Roswell. You are all very fortunate to have them. And Sherry Broadway, the president. Thank you very much for inviting me. I just want to briefly give some background before we get started. I think the primary reason that the Women's Club asked me to moderate tonight is that I do not live in Roswell. My mom still lives in Roswell, but I do not live here. I don't really know the candidates. I don't intimately know the issues facing Roswell. I educated myself in preparation for tonight, but I have no dog at all in this fight. My job is to make it fair and to keep it civil. So, to that end, the format will be a 1-minute opening statement from each candidate. The order for that was set randomly by my kids drawing numbers out of a hat. My kids, when not dealing with each other, my kids are extremely fair, so I'm confident they did not mess with that in any way. We'll have a 1-minute opening statement in the random order, and then we'll move to questions. We have a lot of questions. I did not write any of the questions, nor did anyone in the Women's Club. All the questions came via email online. We received some questions tonight. We're going to do the best we can to get to those, but it's going to be tight. So I'm going to tell you the opposite of what I told the candidates before they came up. I told them that tonight is about you. This is a very important election. There are a lot of seats open, and it's important that you educate yourselves as much as possible, so I'm glad that you're here. I'm going to tell you that tonight is about them. They're here to tell you as much as they can about the candidacies. I tell you that because we will not have any live interaction with the audience. We're not going to have live questions. We will not accept any feedback, any yelling, any questioning of answers. I might politely warn you once, but then we have officers who will escort you out if you can't follow that. But please do, because we have such a tight timeline. I realize as I look at my notes, I'm required to tell you that no opinion or position that I state tonight, first of all, if I state any opinion or position, something has gone terribly wrong, but nothing I say tonight is an official position of the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm obligated to tell you that. All right. A few reminders, and I'll remind you again at the end. The registration deadline for this election is October 10th. The early voting window is October 16th to November 3rd, and Election Day is November 7th. Your showing up tonight is great, but it means nothing if you don't show up and vote. Please listen tonight educate yourselves. See it as either the beginning or the middle of a conversation. We will not get to every important topic tonight. If there's something that you want addressed that wasn't addressed, seek out the candidates and ask them. We're hoping to have some time in the rotunda afterward for you to interact with the candidates. Otherwise, you have some time to find them, email them, message them, and get more input. If there's any topic that's not dealt with at all, find a way to get information on it. After the questions, we'll have a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate. We have encouraged the candidates to use a minute to address any topic they feel did not get sufficient time tonight, and then another minute summarizing why they're the best candidate for their post. So, before we start, I'm going to introduce the candidates. The candidates for post 1 are Sarah Beeson, have to be in here. There we go. Okay, the candidates for post 1 are Sarah Beeson and Jason Miller. The candidates for post 2 are Michael Dalchero, Marissa Pereira, and Alan Sells. The candidates for post 3 are Lindsay Coates and Christine Hall. And the candidates for post 4 are David Johnson and Jade Terraberry. All right, candidates, we're going to start with the opening statements, starting with Mr. Dalchero.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mann, and thank you, Roswell Women's Club, for the opportunity for this evening. It's homecoming week here in Roswell, for Roswell High School, and I'm a Roswell kid, hometown boy from 1986, graduated here, own a small Roswell business since 2005, and I've given back through my treasure and also my time through the youth and also in charity. This election is very important. There's 4 people on the ballot, or 4 races on the ballot. I do want to point out that it's not R versus D. This is non-partisanship. It's all about Roswell. And the headlines facing our city are not specific to a party. I do want to highlight some contrast about where I'm going to go this evening relative to my candidates and the opponents. 1, I'm the pro-business candidate, the favorite candidate for small business. 2, transparency. I believe in consistency of speaking up. And then lastly, I'll be ready for day 1.
Thank you, Mr. Dalchero. Moving to Mr. Miller, candidate for post 1.
Good evening, Roswell. My name's Jason Miller, and I'm running for City Council Post 1. I'm an accountant, an entrepreneur, and a small business owner that growing up in Roswell with my company, growing my company in Roswell from 2 to 32 employees over the last decade. I'm an Eagle Scout. My strategic vision for Roswell is vastly different than that of my opponent. I moved from Atlanta proper to Roswell, much for the reason you guys did, the green spaces, for the suburban-like atmosphere, and our spectacular parks and recreation system. I had to head out from Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta, had to get out from there. They had unbridled quest for growth, and within 1 mile of the home I had there, I had 7 standalone apartments built within a matter of years. If it happened there, it can happen here. Based on many public comments, my opponent is extremely opposed to our city's ban on standalone apartment complexes and related updates to zoning. My opponent would prefer high-density housing over high-quality jobs. Look, we have something very extraordinary in Roswell, and I see nothing but opportunity for us.
Thank you,
as
Mr.
your next
Miller.
council member.
Moving on to Mr. Sells, candidate for post 2.
I'm Alan Sells, and I offer my skills and my passion to the Roswell City Council, to serve on Roswell City Council. I'm a CPA. I've done acquisitions, business development, investing and operating private equity businesses for 25 years. But my skills only matter to you because Roswell needs economic redevelopment, not high-density apartment explosion. Last year, I ran for office and knocked on thousands of doors, talked to thousands of Roswell residents, and again this year. I have a question that I go to. I say, what brought you to Roswell? And they talk about their their family roots here, the parks, the river. But the most important thing they talk about is their neighborhoods. And I say, do you believe, would your neighborhood support more high-density apartments in Roswell? And the answer is a resounding no. My opponent and those that he's aligned with stood in favor of high-density apartments last year, and I opposed that. And I asked for your vote for Alan Sells to build economic redevelopment in Roswell. Thank you very much. Oh, and by the way, hashtag don't Atlanta my Roswell.
Thank you, Mr. Sells. Ms. Beeson, candidate for post 1.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Roswell Women's Club for hosting this evening. My name is Sarah Beeson. I'm the candidate for Post 1, and I am your current incumbent council member. I have gladly served in this role since December of last year, and I'm running to fill a full term. I am a product of Roswell, moved here when I was 9 years old with my family. My folks still live in my childhood home, and now I'm proud to live 5 minutes away, where we work together collectively as a family to run our environmental consulting firm. We specialize in environmental and geotechnical engineering. I was glad to see my parents start our small business at our dining room table as a child, and now I'm in the process of taking on the company with my husband, who's here this evening, where I oversee operations. I have an MBA from the University of Georgia, Master's of Science in Environmental Management from the University of Maryland, and I'm working on my doctorate at the University of Georgia in environmental planning and design with a focus on city planning. These are incredible skills that I don't see anybody else representing either in front of you today or before you on the dais during our normal council meetings, and I think that unique skill set is something that can help bring Roswell forward. I've been very proud to be the public safety liaison this year, and I will continue to support public safety.
Thank you, Ms. Beeson. Moving to Mr. Johnson, candidate for post 4.
Good evening, Roswell Women's Club. Thank you for having us, and thank you for the Roswell voters for being here tonight and taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. I'm David Johnson. I'm running for post 4. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Nicole, over there, and we have 3 kids together, ages 6, 5, and 2. I work at Northside Hospital for Psych as an anesthesiology assistant. I've been doing that for 16 years. I'm also a leader on our neighborhood HOA board, where I worked with the city on numerous issues, including installation of flock security cameras, road resurfacing in our neighborhood, and pedestrian safety. I've spoken here many times before as a resident. Most recently last July, when I was speaking there, and 50 of my neighbors were over there, and we were upset after an accident happened in our neighborhood, and the residents of my neighborhood want better pedestrian safety, and the city has said no. So I decided time to take action, run for office, and that is why I'm here tonight. And I hope you will learn more about me, and I look forward to earning your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Pereira, candidate for post 2.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Marissa Pereira. I am the immigrant in this room. I come from a place called Aden, which is a place in the Middle East, was a British protectorate, became communist, so my family and I left. I came here via India after undergrad, and I studied design and got another undergrad. I've lived in Roswell for almost 27 years. I raised my daughter here as a single mom since she was 9 months old, and she's thrived in the Roswell schools. She's just graduated UGA Law School, go Dogs. I became involved in politics over here just several years ago when I was fighting commuter traffic on our little residentially zoned street. I was most recently with the RTAC, which is the Transportation Commission, and my career has been in design and product development.
Thank you, Ms.
And
Pereira.
I intend to use that going forward.
Moving on to Ms. Terraberry, candidate for post 4.
Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Jade Terraberry. I was recruited here by Cox Enterprises, Cox Automotive. It's on. Can you hear me? Okay, recruited here 9 years ago by Cox Enterprises, Cox Automotive, and it's been a fantastic experience. My little boy just left for Aviation Academy, and I'm getting ready to start my 5th year as Homeowners Association president, and through that have had the opportunity to work through zoning, rezoning issues, stormwater issues, issues that would impact our homeowners' property values and quality of life. And so through my time with Cox, the revenue that I represent across my teams, which are spread all over the country, it's actually 5 times annually what the city's annual budget is. I'm over strategy, operations, business development, strategic planning for Cox Automotive, and I have no self-project, no special interest project. I have time to give to Roswell, and I want to serve this community with the time I have now that
Thank
my
you,
little
Ms.
boy has
Tarberry.
gone to school.
Moving on to Ms. Coates, candidate for post 3.
Hi, I am Lindsay Coates, and thank you so much for having me tonight. I am a first-time candidate. It's the first time I've run for office, and I wish I had had the foresight to invest in a sign business, but missed opportunity. But I lived here as a kid, and when my husband and I were trying to figure out where we were going to raise our family, we intentionally chose Roswell, and we've been living here for the last 12 years with our 2 boys, and now have added to that with a little girl. And the more I've gotten involved in the community in various ways, whether it's through different PTAs or through Roswell Next, it's grown my love for it, and it is a deep love of this community. And specifically with Roswell Next, the last few years, I've been the president, and that's given me a front row seat every single month to the way that the city operates, and hearing from different department heads, hearing from developers, hearing from our different mayors, hearing from all kinds of business owners regularly, and hearing the opportunities and challenges that we face. And I'm excited to take that on as your elected official.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Finally, Ms. Hall, also candidate for post 3.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Roswell Women's Club. I am Christine Hall. When I ran for residents, our residents were tired of kicking the can down the road. That was the reason that I ran. I'm a doer. That is why I've been fighting for you for the past 4 years. Once the gridlock on council was broken 2 years ago, here are some of the things that we've accomplished together. We are on our way to a full-time fire department. We're the only city in Georgia with a fully staffed police department. We have an almost 50% increase in road resurfacing, sidewalks, and multi-use paths. The total millage rate went down 0.006 during my 4 years, and that is with bonds and during a time of raging inflation. We put up guardrails against high density, and that means mixed use has to be at least 51% commercial. We retired new standalone apartments in favor of community-enhancing mixed use. These positive changes are aligned with the vision of Roswell residents. Don't think that these things can't be undone. My opponent is on public record in favor of standalone apartments and high density. Thank you.
Candidates, I think you realize after that opening statement just how short a minute is. Our goal here is to cover as many topics as possible. I recommend that you be concise and that you talk as quickly as you can while still being understandable. We're going to move to the substantive questions now. We have 2 general questions to start. This first question will be for the candidates of post 3 and post 1, and will be a 90-second answer question. Every candidate wants a better Roswell, but words are easy, execution is not. What skills and experience do you have in planning and execution that will be useful as a council person? We'll start with Ms. Hall, candidate for post 3.
Thank you. This is the end of my first term, 4 years, almost 4 years. In my professional life, I am a CFO, and I work with companies that are small and large. Our city is a $200 million, basically, organization, and I have been able to bring my skills and talent to be able to identify areas that we can become more efficient, identify areas where we need help, and identify areas where we can grow our economic base. Basically, the objective is to be the most, deliver the most for the residents, for the bank, for the dollars that they're paying. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Coates, also a candidate for post 3.
Absolutely. So in my career, I started out in corporate marketing, and I worked for Fortune 500 companies, managing multiple budgets for national Beazer Homes, Gerber Plumbing. There were lots of them that we had to do a lot of planning for. And lot of fulfillment. Otherwise, we weren't going to drive traffic. In addition to that, I'm also a small business owner, and I've grown that and been very successful at my residential real estate career. And that took a lot of planning as well and execution. Include the various PTAs that I started out Vickery Mills, and we grew that and created community at that as well, which took loads of planning. And now I'm in the process of doing it for other organizations like Roswell Next and like Mountain Park PTA, where I currently, where I just developed our new business partner program and have already exceeded goals. So I've got a long track record of being able to build out programs and execute on them and deliver. So I know that I would be able to do that in this role as well. And having the insight that I have had with Roswell Next into how the government works and the different layers of what happens here, I know that I would be able to do a great job as your next elected official.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Moving to Ms. Beeson, candidate for post 1.
So my specialty in my daily life oversees operations for a 60-plus employee firm based right here in Roswell with some of our major projects such as Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, Trilla Studios, which is where they film the Marvel movies, Atlanta Beltline. So operations is actually my niche area. In terms of execution, I was requested to be not only on the board, but a leader for several nonprofit organizations based locally. I served on the board for Roswell, Inc., Advance Atlanta, the National Small Business Association, as well as the Georgia Association of Environmental Professionals because of my ability to execute. I'm not only a planner, but I'm more importantly a doer. So these are skills that I think I've brought to council over the last year, and I would like to continue over the next 4 years to serve Roswell.
Thank you, Ms. Beeson. Mr. Miller, candidate for post 1.
As a small business owner and entrepreneur really all of my life, I have experience with just about every aspect of running an operation, whether that's taking an idea from inception to actually planning and actually executing the plan to achieve the results that we want. That's what I'm great at. I'm a strategic thinker, I plan, and I like to actually take action and roll my sleeves up and fix things. I see such an opportunity for us here in Roswell for that skill set to be applied to our everyday lives and our operations in the city. I took an idea as an entrepreneur, as a former controller inside an automotive dealership, and came up with an idea to make their lives much more efficient and keep people out of my office. It turned out to be a company that took off and now makes people's lives across the country easier on a day-to-day basis to understand their financial and their operational performance reporting. That's what I'm good at. I'm good at the analytics, I'm good at forensic accounting, and I'm good at diving into the details. As far as execution, that is one of my fortes. That is what I preach about within my company, with the people that I work with. There are plans, and there are plans, and there are plans. We as a city have been planning for years and years and years and years, and with little execution. So I'm looking to take my experience in actually driving innovation and driving enthusiasm and building a consensus to actually achieve projects that we want to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The next question will be for the candidates running for posts 4 and 2. It will be a 90-second question. There are some who believe Roswell is polarized by opposing voices. What specifically would you do to build bridges and break down walls? And are there examples of how and when you have done this before? We'll start with Mr. Johnson, candidate for post 4.
Yes, thank you. Great question. Being on the HOA board in the June 2020, many of you probably remember when the Black Lives Matter movement and Support the Police movement came out to our neighborhoods. And our neighborhood is very politically active, and they wanted to put signs, supporting one organization or another or both. And we came to the conclusion that this is not good for our neighborhood, right? The vitriol that was said was bad. So I led up a commission of 20 neighbors. Some of them are here tonight. And we worked together with Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, and liberals. And we worked together to come up with a solution that works for our neighborhood. And I'll do the same thing with Roswell. Some of the sitting elected officials here today, I didn't vote for, and I've talked to them face to face. I've met with them to discuss the issues of my neighborhood. I have no problem working across bridges. In fact, some of the people I'm supporting in this race, we have absolutely opposite national political aspirations or inspirations, but we can agree together to work on Roswell and make this community better.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Terraberry, candidate for post 4.
Thank you. So in my time at Cox Automotive, I have earned teams across Auto Trader, Kelley Blue Book, Dealer.com, and Essential Commerce that we now have the MO across all of the Cox businesses, whatever is the most complex, tangliest, people, teams, technology stacks, corporate cultures when we acquire a new business or we have a vendor partnership that has gone sideways. My teams come in and we untangle the pieces and we break down the walls and we find very clear solutions. We set a strategic plan, and then what we do to get results is to get buy-in and ownership for the people who are going to be impacted to be part of championing the change and the result and the outcome. I have thousands of experiences like kind to what the city is dealing with right now. And one of the most interesting things I have found in my time of speaking to hundreds and hundreds of residents and business owners over the last 6 months, we really aren't that far apart on what we want for this amazing community. We want to protect the history and the nature and all of the amazing assets that we have. However, we have some heels that are dug so firmly in the ground, minds are closed. And so I believe my biggest skill to bring to you as Roswell residents, I am a bridge builder, I am a facilitator, I am a communicator, and communication is what it takes to drive results. Approach is everything to get people on the same page.
Thank you, Ms. Terraberry. Ms. Pereira, candidate for post 2.
Yes, I didn't get a chance to say that my career from design and development evolved logically into process improvement and project management. I will use those skills to bring Roswell together. For example, when I used to go into companies, I used to sit down with all the different departments to try and figure out what they do, why they do, how they do, and then try to bring cohesive decision-making into a final outcome that was not good just for one department, but was good for all of the company. This is what I plan to do for all of Roswell. I will take people that are polarized in the room, whether you're for something or against something, let's get together and figure out what you're for, what you're against, what you love, what you hate, and then move to see how we can build something that is for the good of Roswell. Also, Benjamin Franklin was one who said, if you don't plan, plan to fail. I see a lack of planning in Roswell, and I intend to bring that, use my process improvement to have plans executed. I am the only person who has viable plans and visions, master plans that are outlined, if you go to my website, for East Roswell and what I've described as a master plan for the town center. I would appreciate you taking a look at those in detail.
Thank you, Ms. Pereira. Mr. Dalchero, candidate for post 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Thank you, Mr. Mann. So this is a great question. And division in Roswell, from my perspective, I would say it's probably at its most highest level from my perspective that I've seen all these years gone by. If I can just put a little bit further point on it, it's more than Roswell High School and Centennial High School. It's more than East Roswell and West Roswell. It's more about houses and apartments and so on and so on and so on. We agree easily on 90% of these topics in our city. And it could be approximately 5 or 10% where there is like, indifference in terms of like how to take forward certain topics. I also rolled out, you'll see it in a mailer next week, going to all East Roswell people and voters, a 5-point plan. A 5-point plan about how to gain consensus and to get them more into a discussion and taking our government more on the road on a consistent basis to address the blight over there as well in East Roswell. But I do have a background, more than 12 years of global experience working with executives from across the globe. I've been to India, and I worked with leaders across the world.
Thank you, Mr. Del Chero.
Yep.
I'll take a moment, please, audience members, if you would silence your cell phones. I should have said that before I started. Finally, on that question, Mr. Sells, candidate for post 2.
Thank you. You know, the last two recent board chairs that I had, I was the chairman, but also the minority stockholder in a contentious board. One was one that was taken over by the creditors of a company that I came into as an investor because of its financial problems, and had to lead that board from a position of basically weakness when you talk about the stock votes. And we were successful in turning that around and returning a good portion of the money that had been lost by the previous administration back to those shareholders. And we sold the company successfully after 5 years as my role as chairmanship. And then another one, I was also the minority shareholder and chairman of a board in a manufacturing company, and we sort of did the same thing. We bought a company out of bankruptcy. So I have experience in dealing with people who have a different agenda, because their agenda is different than it is for the profit-making business, and bringing them together, because some things transcend those issues. And how do we bring those together? I want to say this too. You know, this is a nonpartisan race, and I enjoyed that so much last year and this year. I think I've spent more time on the doorsteps with people who disagreed with me than those who agreed with me. I really enjoy hearing that, and I never meet someone who's not a friend, and I leave with them as my friend, no matter how they talk to me or how they think about this or how I think about it. I think we can have plain talk and honest disagreement and still move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Sells. We're going to move now to transportation, roads, and traffic. This question will be for post 4 and 3. It'll be a 90-second question. How much time have you spent with the 2040 comprehensive plan, and what parts of it are most important or interesting to you? We'll start with Ms. Terraberry.
Thank you. So I have spent more time than most. Again, one of the things that I do for a living is assimilate tremendous amounts of information very quickly to be able to then create plans. And as we are embarking on so many projects and fund allocation that has already been put out there and that we are committed to as a city, we have a lot of projects: Gateway, Big Creek Parkway, Bridge, Interchange, 400 interchanges that are going to affect our current traffic flow, as well as must be part of a very holistic view and solution and vision for how we develop our city. Density is the primary topic of this race. We must make sure that we are responsible while promoting and recruiting, becoming a magnet for small, family-friendly business destinations, live, work, play, stay, so that we can keep our dollars here. But along with that growth, the requirement is that the infrastructure and the social services and our ability to stay ahead of the traffic and the safety come first. That's an absolute requirement. And some of the plans that are already out there, we need to reconsider and think about safety, left-hand turns versus right-hand turns, allocation. And it's going to take extreme ability to plan and prioritize across a very holistic picture for us to be able to implement those as intended.
Thank you, Ms. Terraberry. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. When you look at the 2040 comp plan, there's one page that shows land that is undervalued, right? And land that's undervalued is land that we're losing tax dollars on. That's land that needs to be redeveloped for workforce housing so our firefighters, teachers, police officers can live there. And part of that redevelopment needs to have commercial aspects to it so we can have commercial tax base to pay for the infrastructures that we need, like Big Creek Parkway, like Gateway, like sidewalks, etc. So my biggest concern is when we sit here and say high density or not high density, what we're really talking about is, do we want this city to grow or not grow, right? And the city has to grow to continue to have the assets that we need. And part of that will be workforce housing with commercial properties, okay? Next, the projects that are coming with traffic, if our teachers, nurses, and firefighters live out of the city and move in, that causes traffic. So what we need, so by providing housing for them, the traffic doesn't the people don't leave our city causing traffic. They stay in our city, they spend their tax dollars here, and we have the money to make the infrastructure improvements that we need.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Moving to post 3, Ms. Coates.
Hi, yes. I actually participated in a lot of the planning that went on. They did a lot of Together Roswell events to identify the opportunities and challenges that our city was facing and get feedback from the citizens, and really enjoyed participating in that organized way of doing it and going through the city. I thought it was a really great thing. What's interesting to me is that we seem to have gotten away from that plan and developed a new mission and vision. So it's like we did one more study and then we're putting it away. But I did read through it then, I've read through it more recently, and things that have appealed to me, or that I believe that we should get, that are interesting, is that we do want those live, work, play. It was overwhelmingly, the respondents said they wanted types of communities like that. Those are high density. They are going to have to be by definition. So we can't be scared of that word high density, because if we want, and the citizens have said that, we want those, then that is what it is. And so I would like to see that move forward. I also would like to see the housing piece of it identified. People overwhelmingly wanted housing for young professionals. We don't have that. We've got missing middle housing right now, and need to be able to provide that for our citizens as we grow. And then the other piece of it that was really interesting in my mind was the connectivity piece, sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Ms. Hall?
Thank you. I did have the privilege of serving on the 2040 Comp Plan Committee. I was community development liaison during that year, and it was a really exciting process for this particular this comprehensive plan, because we changed some of the colors. We basically, changing the colors means we identified different suburban areas, different transitional areas, and different commercial areas. And what we did through the Together Roswell program was marry that comp plan to our strategic plan. So we actually have a plan that is executing on our comp plan in the mission and vision of the strategic plan for the city of Roswell. That includes a lot of redevelopment. We are 42 or 44 square miles, primarily fully developed, very, very little area for new builds. So we have to be smart and practical in the way we develop, especially our commercial corridors. And what this plan has said is the commercial corridors need to be primarily commercial. And that's why we have been correcting our code and identifying what commercial is, what mixed use is, so that we don't lose our opportunity by allowing single-use apartments where we can have mixed use. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. This question will be for post 2 and 1. It's a 90-second question. Please address the delays in the Gateway project and state what you will do to move it forward. We'll start with Mr. Dalcero.
Historic Gateway. I came here in 1986, as I said in my opening remarks. It's 2023, and it looks exactly the same. And not only does it look exactly the same, it's actually very much, for the most part, starting to go sideways. And you start to see what's happening along the corridor when you go left and go right. Now, we also got the red X's and the arrows and so on, and this is a very, very dangerous corridor. I actually served on a Historic Gateway Advisory Committee, and I served as chairman for that. Our charter was actually try to figure out how to beautify the actual historic gateway. We didn't play a part in actually trying to get the proposal and site plans and all that in place. But moving forward, we need to go ahead and get going and get forward with this pronto. It's not only choking our city as the portal to our city, but we need to get this addressed for the safety of our citizens. We need to go ahead and take into consideration, of course, all the stakeholders up and down the street, but it's been on the whiteboard for way too long. And I'm going to be an advocate to get that started pronto, period.
Thank you. Mr. Sells?
You know, he's right. It has been on the docket a long, long time, and I think one of the things that we must stop doing is we must start by recognizing that the T-SPLOST sort of laid out some boundaries that we need to live within, and much of this is funded. And so, for one thing, there are a few bridges. The Grimes Bridge across to the east side is very, very important. And we must stop trying to retrade all of these things that we have agreed upon already and move forward with this project. It's important to the city, and it's important to us as Roswell residents. It's important to both sides of Roswell to have the crossovers. But also, I want to address one other thing. I'm going to address something. You said we could do this, I believe. We could talk about some of the prior questions. You know, we keep talking about workforce housing. Most of the apartments in this city have recently traded, and they're going for about $180,000 per door. Okay, these are not going to become workforce housing. And what we are building across the street from my office is not workforce housing. It's going to be $2,500 to $3,000 apartment. I am for mixed use. I believe we can use the opportunity to bring new businesses by allowing mixed use. But I am not in favor of standalone high-density apartments that only make for more traffic and make us more like Sandy Springs, which we don't want to do.
Thank you. Ms. Pereira?
Having worked on the Transportation Commission, I think I'm the one qualified here to talk about this in rather greater detail, because as you might have already heard, we have been fighting tooth and nail on the Gateway project to bring about the best outcome for Roswell, and especially for our historic district. I am not going to be talking about density or Grimes Bridge Road, because this is really important. The entrance of our city on Atlanta Street, if you look at the design that is currently proposed, you will see that most of the tree canopy is going to be cut down. What you also don't know is that there's about 20-foot high retaining walls, and if you notice the sound barriers on 400, those ugly things are going to be on the Gateway project the way it is designed currently. So if you don't want to see that, go to my page that says transportation, smart transportation. You will see a diagram over there, and you will see outlined how the project that we have outlined in RTAC is superior to the current design, and get in touch with City Hall and propose that they use our design, which will cost less, be more effective for the businesses that are on Atlanta Highway, and keep and maintain our historic areas.
Thank you. Moving to post one, Mr. Miller.
The Gateway project, that's perhaps one of the most unique features, or will be one of the most unique features for Roswell as people cross into our city. It's going to be the reversible lanes. I cannot wait to get this project started. The reversible lanes are a problem. We know that traffic is a nightmare on that road. And what I really want to push on this is really get back to basics and what the voters actually voted for in the T-SPLOST. And that was really with the underground power lines. And I know that we can try to push and actually push GDOT to actually get this plan done the way we agreed to have it done. I am looking forward to getting involved in that project and really pushing that along, because there are a lot of great people involved in that project that have great ideas that I know that'll make Roswell, the Gateway project will make Roswell entrance perfect. Along those terms, the Gateway project does lead us into a perfect example of traffic and how that is an issue for us around here. That is why we have to focus on redeveloping our economic centers and avoid increasing our traffic based on bringing in higher density units. So once we can get the Gateway project completed and we can get economic centers redeveloped and we can actually attract businesses to Roswell, much like mine, that want to come to Roswell because we have so much to offer, the Gateway project will make that entrance and exit out of Roswell so much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Beeson?
Thanks. So one thing I don't think anybody's actually said so far is, what is the Gateway Project? Not everybody in this room is completely up to speed on that. So to clarify, it's a road redevelopment project starting at South Atlanta Street, going down Highway 9 as you come into the river. Anybody who has ever traveled towards the river knows that that entire Gateway project, that whole roadway is going to be a nightmare, right? We have reversible lanes. Trying to get down to the river, you can't take a left-hand turn during certain times of the day. When you do, it backs up. I actually used to live at the condominiums right there. It took a wing and a prayer and a really good citizen to let you out of that complex if you wanted to make a left-hand turn during rush hour. So in many ways, I understand the goals of the Gateway Project. It's to be able to improve mobility in that area. But at the same time, there are some very valid concerns on behalf of residents in terms of the environmental impact of the area, the width of the roads, the speed of the roads, how they can safely navigate it, making sure we're not impacting our national forest area. There's also some roundabouts closer up towards historic Roswell that's going to be seizing a lot of private property, and so making sure that we're protective of those private property rights as well. In terms of ways to move it forward, I have been supportive of the city requesting from GDOT, because this is a state-controlled road, this is a state road, ways that we can make the project more minimally invasive and have less impact. But the importance is time is of the essence. I know this working around construction projects. The longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to get. So we need to be able to come to a better agreement with GDOT and be able to move this forward, as to not make it more expensive or make it take even longer. And we're looking at 2026 right now.
Thank you. The next question will be a 1-minute question, and it will be only for the candidates of Post 2. Where will the downtown parking deck be located, and when will it be completed? Start with Mr. Sells.
All right. I can't say. I'm sitting in the mayor's chair, so I have to say, I can't tell you that right now. He did say just this last week that he intends to announce that, or I think in the next 30 days or so. So it is coming very soon. I would say more largely about that project, there are many ways for us to fund that besides us paying to park. And I think we should look into those ways of financing that would be more advantageous to Roswell residents, who are going to be the ones funding it one way or the other. It's going to certainly make a big difference down here in the ability to come and stay and enjoy. And Canton Street is important to us. It's very important to us as a city. It's a hallmark. It is only 3% of our revenue, so it's, we need to keep that in perspective. So let's find some way to fund and place it. I believe there are some places that are at hand, I understand, but I do not know the answer to that. I don't know where it's going to be. It could be right here.
Thank you. Ms. Pereira?
This goes exactly along with the plan that I've outlined, because nobody knows. This is the top secret, right? And that's totally against what we need to have in Roswell. We need to have open and honest discourse, and that's the reason why I have presented a Roswell Town Center master plan. Because if we had done that, if we had a plan in place already, everybody would already know where the parking deck was going to be, and then we can all be aligned with something and move forward, instead of Roswell taking one step forward and one step behind for every decision that is made behind closed doors.
Thank you. Mr. Nalchero?
Thank you. Interestingly, that's a question I've been asking. So when it came to this rollout of the promenade for Canton Street, it landed on April 26th on Facebook. That was the rollout. And I think greater part of 700 to 800 people jumped on it and gave their remarks and likes and you name it, saying that tomorrow, come to City Hall if you're a business owner or resident to give your remarks and comments. And then from there were meetings about the task force being formed and meetings with City Hall about this promenade. But no one knew where this parking deck will be, and we were told back in July it'll be done in 2 years. So to be honest, I'd like to go ahead and ask council and mayor that question, because at this point, we need to get this taken care of, and we are waiting. It makes no sense to go ahead and roll out like a promenade for Canton Street when we don't have enough parking to begin with. And I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of upset business owners and residents.
Thank you. The next question is a 1-minute question for the candidates for Post 1. There are a lot of people enjoying the Old Mill Park and Vickery Creek waterfall. The resulting traffic and parking is burdensome to some residents in the Mill Village area. What solutions can be a win-win for the neighborhood and for the people coming to enjoy nature from Roswell and beyond? And we'll start with Ms. Beeson.
So I'm quite familiar with these problems. As public safety liaison, I've had numerous meetings both with Chief Conroy, who's our police chief, as well as Chief Panino, who is our fire chief, regarding the impacts to safety in the area. Something to keep in mind, though, is we control, obviously, the mill side. However, that's city property. The opposite side of the creek in that area is a national park that is federally controlled. We do not have jurisdiction there. So you have to be mindful if we do have regulations in place that it has to be only on our side because we can't control it. Ways to improve it is we can expand some of our parking areas so that we can provide more public parking. Right now, a lot of those streets, they're historic streets too, so a little more narrow, completely choked with folks who are parking along the road there, which they are public roads. It's legal for them to do so, but we need to make sure that we're providing more public parking so that that's not the case. Being able to increase more of our patrols in the area to make sure that people are being law-abiding citizens, to make sure that they are being safe. And I have been privy to numerous times where folks have been fished out of the creek in the area, so making sure that we can prevent those situations.
Thank you, Ms. Beeson. We're going to move to green space, parks, and the arts.
Wait, sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Miller.
That's okay, that's okay.
I'm too focused on time tonight. I apologize. Go ahead,
No
Mr.
problem
Miller.
at all. Those are certainly two fantastic areas of Roswell, and I agree with that. The parking problems are a bit disastrous, and we have to do better. What I would like to work on in that area is to absolutely make sure that our pedestrians and our bike paths are safe to travel up and along Riverside Driveway or Riverside Drive to get along the park process there and to and from the parks in an easier manner. Vicar Creek Waterfall, there really isn't a lot of parking there at all. I understand that. Even every time I try to go with my dog, it's tough. So if you're into biking and hiking, it's great for you for now, but we do have to solve that solution. And I know that our bike and master sidewalk plan will help alleviate some of the transportation issues to and from those areas in a safe manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I won't do that again, I promise you. All right, moving to green space, parks, and the arts. This is a 1-minute question for the candidates for post 4. What are your thoughts on the development of a city green on the property of City Hall? We'll start with Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I am the biggest proponent for family-centered destinations. When we had our 2-year-old's birthday, we didn't come to downtown Roswell to celebrate with 20 of our friends. We went to Alpharetta because they have a green space where kids can run around and do their things, and 2-year-olds can do whatever they do and have a great time. So City Green would start to open up downtown Roswell and Canton Street for families to come and enjoy their amenities here in the city. That means that our restaurants and our businesses get more walkable traffic. They get, if it's part of the alcohol district, you can go grab a drink, walk down, have your kids run around just like we do in Alpharetta. So my tax dollars with City Green stays in Roswell, and they don't go to Alpharetta, Halcyon, Peachtree Town Center, downtown Woodstock, downtown Duluth, all the places that are competing for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Terryberry?
Yes, so green projects are incredibly important. We have to protect the nature, the tree canopy, the water, stormwater that is absorbed by our tree system. However, we can't be doing it with a focus on bright, shiny projects. These have to be in places and locations where we're not disrupting the nature and the history that is so important and so critical to the Roswell that we know and love. The Sacred War Memorial, the River Parks project that has just rolled out, just broken ground in the last couple of weeks, is going to give the opportunity for us to have those green spaces that are critically important, again, to keep our dollars here, to make sure that we create the economic vibrance that we need to provide tax relief for our residents. But there is a way to do that that takes into account the rolling hills, the nature, the natural assets that we have as a community, and we protect those and we don't add additional impervious surfaces or hurt things that are part of the natural and historic draw of this amazing city.
The next question is a 1-minute question for the candidates for post 3. What role should the city play in the management and financial support of Roswell's historic homes? We'll start with Ms. Coates.
Absolutely. So current council has made the decision to go all in on our historic homes and make them as assets and try to make them profitable. I'm not necessarily in favor of that route. I feel like it's taking away from private businesses that could be flourishing in the area as well. The maintenance of those homes is very expensive, and there's a lot of wear and tear on them when you're hosting events and weddings and things like that. I've been in them, been to Mimosa Hall multiple times and spoken with them there. So I don't necessarily think that the government, our government, should be in the events space business. But as the route that we've gone currently, I would uphold that and let's keep the plan moving, because I don't know all the ins and outs of what they do have planned as far as those homes go. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
Thank you. Very, very exciting that the city has recognized that we are a historic city, and we're a historic city because our historic homes are some of our biggest assets, the historic homes in our parks and the river. That is what Roswell is. Roswell has made a commitment to the historic homes. We have acquired, the city has acquired recently fifth or sixth home, and we are presently having a historic asset master plan completed for those homes on Bullock Avenue. So most of the homes are along Bullock Avenue, and there are plans for a long-term plan for Bullock Avenue that includes a botanical garden that is completely done with natural plants. So that is something that the city is doing.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. The next question will be a 1-minute question for the candidates for post 1. What ideas do you have to improve the entertainment venue and events at Riverside Park? We'll start with Ms. Beeson.
So I guess I'm a little bit biased in this because we've actually been in part of a process with our River Parks Master Plan and the revision of all of our park space along the river. So I've actually been able to contribute to some of those. Making sure that it's more efficient where we do Riverside Sounds right now with the way that the stage is, being able to incorporate more actual events facilities within those areas so that you're not just in a canopy outside with a picnic table, but actually having true events facilities, having more inclusive playgrounds because you'll have children who want to have more, not only natural playgrounds, but being able to resist sensory overload, to be more encompassing of children with different abilities. But also being able to have the splash pad continue there. Again, very biased. I'm a mom of small children. We go to the splash pad a lot. So making sure that we can keep that as part of the space. So whether you are 2 years old or you're 92 years old, you should really be able to enjoy all of the facilities at Riverside.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Riverside Park, I had the fantastic opportunity recently to volunteer to remove some invasive species of plants in the park along with Rivers Alive. Fantastic park. The venue is wonderful with a stage right there for artists and things to come perform in a public environment like that is very, very awesome. I would like to improve accessibility to the stage area in and around that park so that we can make the accessibility much easier for people that need that help. And as far as other events, I'm excited to see Roswell as we continue growing and we bring entertainment into our city to be able to utilize that venue in a lot more productive ways. Thank you.
The last question in this category is a 1-minute question for the candidates for post 3. Art, in all its formats, visual and performance, captures a city's sense of place and embodies how it wants to be known. Great cities are defined by great art. Do you agree with that statement? And if so, what would you do to make Roswell a destination for the arts? We'll start with Ms. Hall.
Thank you. I have to give credit to my colleague, Councilmember Lee Hills, because this is something that she has worked on, and I have supported her wholeheartedly. Arts are incredibly important to our city, and we have done an incredible job in helping them kick off the Master Arts Master Plan. The city does fund the organization, and you have probably seen the beautiful art that's on the trails and the paths and the painted utility boxes. So it's very, very important.
Ms. Coates.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm a big fan of the arts, and I have loved to see the utility boxes that got done. My kids absolutely love them as well. I would like to see Roswell improve in this area, though, because I do feel like we are we're kind of being art critics on some things that we don't need to be doing. And I've heard that feedback from some of the people that have created murals. I would like to see an art center in the West. Let's give them, our cultural arts center here is too small for a lot of bigger performances. So, in the East, I said. So if we can get a nicer, bigger auditorium-style arts center, cultural arts center over there, where we can host bigger performances and bring in bigger acts musically and provide, and then that would be amazing to me. And then also I'd like to just see more of the murals around town. I think that they're awesome and they're beautiful.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. We're going to shift now to business and taxes. First question is a 90-second question for the candidates for Post 1 and Post 2. What should our city do to improve our commercial tax base? We'll start with Mr. Miller.
That's right up my alley. As a small business owner and entrepreneur, when I moved my company here 10 years ago, I moved here with 2 employees, and now we have 32. We moved here based on some economic tax incentives that were offered to small businesses, much like myself, to retain talent, to actually reinvest in our businesses and grow our companies. That's exactly what I want to revisit to bring back, because I know there are companies like me that are looking for the perfect place to call home, Roswell, much like I do, and it offers the perfect opportunity for their employees to find great places to live, great environments to work and play in, and it's a win-win-win for all. Along those lines, if we have to revitalize our economic corridors, primarily on the east side, we have a lot of opportunity. I see opportunity everywhere around us. I see an economic center on the east side as well as on the west side. There's no reason why we can't have the best of both worlds. We have so much to offer between the entire city, and amongst us all, I'm looking forward to improving that commercial viability and bringing a lot of activity into the East Roswell Economic Corridor area. That should be, I can't wait to work with other small business owners, encourage those entrepreneurs to get involved and actually and take a chance on themselves like I did. And I promise you, as a city, we can provide the support to make sure they can achieve their dreams much like I did. That in and of itself will improve our commercial tax base and start shifting that tax burden, which is 75-25 residential primarily. That'll help us start getting that equilibrium back to our tax base.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Beeson?
Sure, I think everybody wants to bring more businesses to Roswell, but we've never really begged the question of why businesses are not coming to Roswell. It's just like American apple pie, everyone loves it. Roswell, especially in recent years, has been harder to do business with. We haven't been as aggressive with our economic development recruitment, and I do applaud the city for being able to bring on Mr. Darrell Connolly, actually creating an economic development arm within the city, but we need to do better with working with our outside organizations, such as Roswell Inc., being able to have benchmarks in place for what we want to achieve as a city, and then more importantly, looking at the reasons why companies aren't coming here. Right before I came on council, we took a massive increase on our business taxes. We don't let our businesses speak at our council meetings, so they don't have a voice, because unless you are a resident, you cannot give public comment at council meetings. When we look at things like workforce housing, when you have a major corporation or a small business looking to relocate their company, they're not trying to decide where they're going to go play golf. They're not trying to decide where the fanciest street corner is going to be. It's where are we going to get our workers and where are we going to house them. So until we can answer the important questions of how we are going to foster young professionals within the city, how we are going to retain and recruit top talent, we're not going to be able to answer or solve for X of why we cannot achieve real economic development within the city that can last. That is something that I would like to do if I have a longer tenure on council, and continue to work with stakeholders such as Mr. Connolly and Roswell Inc. For more aggressive ways that we can provide incentives to recruit those major employers here.
Thank you. Shifting to Post 2, Mr. Sells.
Yes, thank you. You know, Alpharetta's daytime population increases fourfold, and Roswell's daytime population shrinks. And the reason is because we are workforce housing for Alpharetta. What we need to do is to bring employers to Roswell. We need to, should use the Roswell Development Authority and other ways to attract the businesses that we want, not simply wait till they show up and ask for a variance. And the way you do that is there are places where the Roswell Development Authority could acquire property and attract businesses to that property with the plan, and they're working to do that. That's the way you do that. We need bigger employers using the Roswell Development Authority and the business development, and bringing those kinds of larger employers into our space. That will shift the burden. The other thing we need to do is to make sure that we are thinking ahead about what we want to have in spaces where we know things are going to change. And we know for sure along Holcomb Bridge at 400, there are going to be 3 bridges instead of 1. There's going to be a big change in that 90 acres around south of Big Creek Park all the way down the other side of Holcomb Bridge. This is an opportunity for us to use our plan and our Roswell Development Authority and tools like that to bring the businesses that we want to those and see larger employers, because as Jason said, the citizens bear the majority of the tax burden, and we need to shift that to businesses.
Thank you. Mr. Dalchero.
Thank you. As heard before, it is true. 75% of our tax digest stems from residential. If we don't address economic development in the city, increasing our commercial base, where will our residential property values or taxes will be going? They will be going up, correct? So this is something that's, I would say, is a widespread issue across our entire city from all walks of life. We need to be focused on not only retaining our current businesses, but how to help them expand. I went to the Georgia Academy of Economic Development. I paid my own way through that last year. And one of the things we learned is about retention and expansion of your current businesses. What we are facing right now in our city is that we have a anti-business policy in terms of how we foster those relationships. For example, my wife and I own a small business. Our annual tax bill to be a registered business went up 495%. That's outrageous. And on top of that, you think if you pay more, you would get more. That is incorrect. What we have seen in the city is taxation without representation. Business owners are not allowed to speak at our city council meetings. Thank you. I wish I had more time. I'll talk about it later.
Ms. Pereira.
I agree that business in Roswell is hard to come by just by the news articles that you read and from talking to businesses as well. This is the reason why I keep going back to a plan. You know, if Roswell had a master plan, whether it's on the east side, which I've already identified 4 major areas there that with revitalization opportunities, and if we had a town center master plan, everybody would be in the know. The businesses would be in the know as to what has been identified as a possible development and come to the city with ideas already, and the city wouldn't have the wouldn't need to waste time going back and forth and denying stuff. So I think it would make it much easier. I also like the idea, if you know, Seaside, Florida has done an excellent job in what they've identified as incubator businesses. This is where Roswell would engage with businesses to be on a kind of part-time, maybe part-time, but temporary basis, and see how business is going. And if business is going well, then they can move on to a permanent location. But I think it's a win-win because the business wouldn't have that much invested and would be able to try something out. So I think going back to a plan that engages the community, whether it's the business community or the local residents, is a good idea to have transparency and will engage business.
Thank you. The next question is a 90-second question for post 3 and 4. How would you influence the development of East Roswell? We'll start with Ms. Coates.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, we're going to have to look at our code. If we want to change the development over there, we've got to incentivize or change our code so that we can attract those live, work, play areas and developments in specific areas over there. Currently, our code calls for a restriction to 40% residential, and it also requires 40% green space. That's not going to attract any developer. It doesn't pencil out for those live, work, play environments. So that needs to be looked at. Secondly, we do need to streamline our processes for opening up business in Roswell. I've spoken with a lot of business owners, and many of them feel like they do not have an advocate at City Hall, and they haven't felt that way in a very long time. The owner of a very large brewery here has stated that in the 10 years that they've been open, he doesn't feel like anybody at City Hall has their back. We've got to start making a difference here and being an advocate for those businesses. And that means streamlining opening a business, the processes to do so, and it means reducing the streamlining the permitting process as well. We've changed recently how even servers get their pouring permits, and they now have to go every year, and it takes 3 times to go to City Hall, which means they're missing work, and they're paying double instead of the former where it was every other year. So I also, oh, yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Coates. Ms. Hall?
Thank you. A lot of exciting news on the economic front. As you're probably aware, we hired our first economic development director, and he's been here just a little over a year. As part of building that department, Roswell Inc. and CVB, Andy and Steve, have moved their offices to City Hall. So they are starting to work as a team and collaborate and not work in an isolated fashion. We have the city, as part of the economic development plan, broken down into 4 nodes. The question speaks specifically to East Roswell. East Roswell is its own node. A lot of exciting things happening there. We stood up the Roswell Development Authority. So in addition to having the economic development team here, there's the Roswell Development Authority that can basically bring businesses in and help support the efforts of our economic development team here at City Hall. We're developing a toolbox of incentives. There are so many incentives that are coming in from the state and federal government to entice businesses. Really, really exciting things on that front. There is a proposed development on the east side. It's a medical mixed use. Currently in concept phase, but that's going to bring approximately 1,700 jobs to the east side and really spur growth in that area. So a lot of exciting things happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Terryberry?
Thank you. So the east side is near and dear to my heart. I moved my parents down here 5 years ago, and my mom, she's right off of Eves Road, and she teaches for Fulton County Schools special education. But revenue streams in many of the commercial areas that are highly densely populated in our city, medical, automotive, hospitality, those businesses are changing drastically. The market share shifts and the changes in technology, the changes in consumer behavior are creating a lot of lack of stability, but also opportunities. Those businesses are they're looking nationwide at places where they can come in. And on the east side, we have a tremendous number of open parcels, rundown shopping centers that, separate topic, we need better guardrails in place that allow us to keep those residential centers full. Incentives are a big part of that. But what we cannot let happen again is another Target project. My opponent was quoted in the AJC supporting that. There's a 14-acre parcel on the east side that has a letter of intent on it right now there are no plans that have been submitted waiting for the election to be over to determine. And maybe high density is not the right word. It's the difference between urbanization of our Roswell that we know and love versus protection of the residential integrity while simultaneously stimulating the economy to take that burden off of our residents. So we're going to focus on all of Roswell, not just East Roswell, but we have some great spots over there that we must protect.
Very. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. As a resident of East Roswell, this is obviously very important to me. I'm really tired of looking at empty commercial buildings that act more like truck stops than anything else. A medical mixed-use place sounds great. That would be awesome. Where's the phlebotomist going to live, right? I work in healthcare. I know the salaries that some of the people that are going to work in this medical place make. They're not going to live in Roswell, unfortunately. So guess what? They're going to drive on Holcomb Bridge Road from Stone Mountain or Norcross, and they're going to create traffic in your neighborhoods. So if we do not create housing for the workers, it's pointless. We've done nothing good. So East Roswell needs to be redeveloped into a mixed-use environment that can house our workers, scrub techs, police officers, nurses. That is highly important to reduce the traffic, because East Roswell has a lot of traffic too. Reduce our traffic and expand our commercial tax base. The other thing I would like to say is, when a business wanted to open a fancy steakhouse, it took them 7 months to get a permit from our city to open. 7 months of paying rent with no revenue. It's unacceptable for the city to deny a business that long of a permit, right? We need to be friendlier to businesses, be their allies and not their adversaries.
We've touched on this already tonight, but now we're going to have two similar questions that explicitly address planning and development, and specifically housing. First question is for candidates for post 3 and 1. It's a 90-second question. Some believe that Roswell's housing is too expensive for our working class, and we need to create more low-income, affordable housing by allowing more high-density apartment and townhome communities. Do you agree with this, or do we have enough low-income housing already? Please explain your position on low-income housing, apartments, and the type of developments you would allow and would like to see more of if you are elected. We'll start with Ms. Hall.
Thank you. Well, I am proud to say that Roswell is the only North Fulton community that has a Roswell Housing Authority. We have a housing authority that is specifically for low income. That housing authority has been neglected and kicked down the road, and you may have remembered in the news that one of the buildings was condemned. We, as a city, stood up and stood behind the housing authority, basically helped them make a plan so that they can redevelop that property, and they will be adding roughly 150 units to what existed there. So we're pretty happy that we're able to support them. As far as the types of developments that Roswell needs, we've looked at the numbers, we've looked at the density, we've looked at what we have. Roswell, in our area, we have the lowest rents of our sister cities. Basically, there was a survey that came out earlier this year on that. We need mixed use, and we need mixed use in our corridors that call for mixed use. So that is the type of projects that we need to encourage.
Ms. Coates?
Absolutely. So, I am the product of a Roswell apartment complex, okay? Standalone apartment complex. Does that mean I'm sitting here advocating for that? No, it doesn't. It's not even in our code currently. It was removed. So I am not advocating for that. As far as low-income housing, that area and section was part of the Vickery Mill School System, where I was the PTA president for many years. And I was in and around that complex very actively, especially in 2020 when we did the school meal program. I consider them part of our family, and I love that they're a piece of Roswell. Am I advocating for more low-income housing? I am not. I haven't said that once. What I do want to see more of is that mixed-use housing, and I do believe that we do need to change our code to allow for some of that so that we can have those live, work, play communities in specific areas that it makes sense, so that we can start to provide the young professional housing, that missing middle housing that we don't seem to have, because there are a lot of expensive apartments here, and we've got more affordable style too. But when you increase your housing supply, it's the supply and demand, right? You start to bring down the cost of the others if you increase your supply. So that's what I'm in favor of, and in favor of a lot of those mixed-use developments that do include other types of housing, including apartments.
Thank you. Ms. Beeson.
I do not have the ability to describe this to you in a minute to a minute and a half. I will say that I do take some contention with the way that this question is phrased. What is my position on low-income housing and apartments? As if the two phrases are mutually exclusive, that if you live in an apartment, you are inherently living in a low-income area. Apartments also house folks like young professionals, people who are highly educated. They also house probably, I would assume, at least somebody's parent in here. When grandma leaves her house and she cannot maintain a yard anymore, she cannot get up and down stairs, it's not my frame of mind to say, well, bye, grandma, you can't live in Roswell anymore. No, we should be able to be inclusive as a community. I have an environmental background. I look at it as biodiversity. When you're able to have an inclusive community where folks who not only wash dishes, but who are also your doctor, can live within the same city, you can have the benefits of having not only a more diverse community, you can have decreased traffic, you can make sure that you have full employment at all of your local businesses, you can be more economically competitive, and these are ways that we need to change that mindset. I'm also tired of people saying that they do not support apartments, but they love mixed use. Fun fact, mixed use does not include single-family homes. Mixed use includes apartments. In terms of low-income housing, I was proud to support, as Councilmember Hall mentioned, the redevelopment of Roswell Housing Authority and being able to improve the housing situation for our residents there, and also increasing the number of units there to make sure that they can have a higher quality of life and that they are not displaced out of our community.
Mr. Miller.
I have spent a little bit of time with RHA recently and learning about the great things that that organization is doing and the redevelopment that is presently occurring and that process, and I'm excited for that. Low-income housing and apartments, I grew up in Mississippi. I'm from the Delta, so I understand low-income housing and I understand apartments. I understand all of that. And that was primarily what our community was. And when I left there and I moved to Roswell, that's when, or moved, started making my way to Atlanta, that's really when I started understanding that to have what we're describing as affordable housing or more workforce housing, there's just not many places in Roswell where a developer or anyone's going to say, you know what, I'm going to not try to maximize my profit. Developers are in the business to make money, and that's an unfortunate part. But as far as getting that actually built and off the ground is quite the challenge without the RHA and their work that they do in the areas that we can do that in. I do love the fact, I love mixed use being discussed. I do love the fact that in high density, it's the same thing. It's increasing the amount of people that live in our city without increasing our work opportunities. I think that's where we fall short. I think we have a lot of great people that live in Roswell that enjoy the commute, but there are also a lot of people that live in Roswell that would like the opportunity to work a little bit closer, and I think we have those opportunities to bring those businesses in, to give those people those opportunities to live in Roswell and work in Roswell. Thank you.
The next question is a 90-second question for the candidates for posts 4 and 2. Would you be in favor of adding new developments like the one on the former Southern Skillet location farther down Highway 9? We'll start with Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Southern Skillet's and good developments, and on commercial corridor, it's going to bring about increase our tax revenues, and it's going to bring out a new hotel. Right, Roswell has 13 hotels, and we have an $80 average hotel rate. Alpharetta is like $240 average daily rate. Right, that's lost revenue for us. Every day we're losing revenue because 34% of that revenue goes to the general fund, and Alpharetta is getting $284 a day of 34% of $284, and we're getting 34% of 80. So yes, building more hotels down Highway 9. And mixed-use developments, I would 100% support.
Thank you. Ms. Terryberry?
Yes, so our primary job as a leader is to listen to the voice of the whole, to set a vision, and then to allow the staff and the folks in roles to execute on that plan. And I've heard add residents, reduce traffic, bring down property values, or reduce prices. And we don't control fair market value. No decision, some decisions that City Council make, many in fact have an influence, but supply and demand, cost per hour of labor, cost of materials, those are really key pieces that have to be part of this big picture consideration. And so while I am supportive of protecting property values for the residents we have today, we currently have 2,200 residents per square mile in Roswell. Atlanta has 3,700. Sandy Springs and Milton and Alpharetta are surrounding cities that we are not yet competitive in the northern arc of Atlanta. They've made a decision and they have a conscious choice for how they are building out. My number one focus is listening to the residents of Roswell and protecting their values, protecting the residential integrity, and making sure that we have housing and mixed use and commercial developments and properties. But I have talked to hundreds of residents, and I'm not hearing anybody say that they want their property values to go down or be impacted negatively as a result of what we're bringing into this city.
Thank you. Moving to post 2, Ms. Pereira.
So I'm all about development. It just has to be development that is in keeping with the people, the will of the people, and figuring out what is best for Roswell. Roswell operates as a piecemeal sort of mentality. That's the reason why Roswell looks rather disjointed. I'd like to see a Roswell that that development stems from a plan. So if we are going to have any kind of a hotel, a new opportunity, I'd like it to be in a master plan and involving the people so that there is input, as Jay just mentioned, based on what the needs of the people are, what the needs of the community are. To just operate in a project mentality is not doing any good, because all of that is done behind closed doors. I'd like to see where people are presented with possibly 2 or 3 plans, and then everybody has input, a regular process to involve the people and move a plan forward, and then we can all agree on what happens next, how it happens, and be excited for the execution and a Roswell that we can all be proud of.
Mr. Notero.
Thank you. This comes back to the discussion around economic development and our business climate here as a city. And it's also an intersection as well around housing for people who want to call Roswell home. So this is a conversation that's an intersection of those three, and provided that it all works out, there's gonna be a great opportunity there for businesses and for people to call home, but also to balance this unbalanced tax digest, which again, 75% are sitting on the shoulders of residents. I am in favor of Southern Skillet being what has transpired with this project that we hear that's gonna be finished very soon. Now, what's interesting is that years gone back, there was an opportunity for us to have something that was nicknamed the Charlie Brown Project. Charlie Brown Project was a combination of residences, business, commercial. It was a fantastic opportunity. We had an opportunity there as a city. Unfortunately, we missed that opportunity. And now we see Halcyon and Forsyth. We see Avalon and Alpharetta. We see Medley and Johns Creek. We're still over here wringing our hands. You know, we need to get this addressed rapidly, because the longer that we stay stale, the longer that we'll have to pay the price. So we have a lot of blight and a lot of opportunity to go ahead and get a lot of good change right away.
Thank you. Mr. Sells?
You know, I got several points I want to make. The first is a fun fact on my own. Actually, mixed use is in the code. Live, work, and play is in the code. What's not in the code is standalone apartments. And my opponent and those aligned with him stood up in this room right here and argued to keep standalone apartments in the code last year. So with respect to the Southern Skillet specifically, you know, developments like that, there are places where you can build above the tree line, and that's in character with that area. It's not in character with that area in my mind. I think that that's more the historic district. Perhaps around Highway 9 and Holcomb Bridge would be an appropriate place to build above the tree line, but I would not support the Southern Skillet. And as to why higher room rates are in Alpharetta, it's because Alpharetta have headquarters, corporate headquarters. We have vape shops and massage parlors, okay? That's why they have the rates that they do. And we need to work to attract those kinds of employers. I was pleased to see the bus last week, But ask yourself, why were so many of those shops in our city? And the reason is because we have these obsolete, financially and economically and physically obsolete strip malls. And we need to develop those into real businesses where we can, and to bring employers to Roswell so that Roswell quadruples during the day and not sends all their people to Alpharetta to work.
Shifting to a couple shorter questions. This next question is a 1-minute question for post 4. Roswell is a growing city with many ongoing and future construction projects and multiple music venues, some of which are placed or are being planned adjacent to existing residential neighborhoods. Are you in favor of relaxing the city noise and lighting restrictions when requested for the benefit of music venues and new construction projects, or maintaining the existing restrictions for the benefit of the residential neighborhoods? We'll start with Ms. Terraberry.
Like everything, and we are all supportive of the right kind of development, there are decisions in real estate and development that are not one size fits all. In fact, they are very seldom one size fits all. And similar to what I have called out earlier as differentiators in our race, when those opportunities come up, instead of making a blanket rule or a blanket exception to those, collecting the feedback of the residential communities that are going to be impacted by those potential additions would be where we would start. It's about ensuring that the people whose lives are going to be impacted have a say and an opportunity to voice their opinion. Placement and location are critical for all of these things, which is why prioritization of the big picture, understanding how we are going to make sure that safety and sustainability are at the top of the list for wherever we put all of these things, and that traffic and how that will impact our residents and our residents' property values, with them having input and feedback on the front end, will be critical.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. This would be very dependent on where the music venue is and what neighborhoods are affected, what neighborhoods aren't affected, et cetera. I do not believe that we should really relax our noise ordinances for a music venue. I think, we have the noise ordinance and they can have the concert during that time. I'm willing to make decisions. Just made one right then. My opponent gave you a lot of words, but didn't tell you yes or no. So, I think that's one of the differentials between myself and her. So, and also I live on the east side of Roswell. Ameris Bank plays a lot of concerts, and I can hear them pretty well on most nights, and it can get very annoying. So, overall, no, I would not be overall in favor of relaxing the noise ordinance.
Next question is a 1-minute question for the candidates for post 2. What ideas do you have to maintain and enhance the attractiveness of the Canton and Oak Street areas? We'll start with Mr. Del Charo.
One example that strikes me that speaks to a lot is about not only fostering these current relationships that we have on Canton Street that cut across business, residents, and civic. If we don't take care of what we have, we're in trouble. Historic Roswell Beautification Project was not able to work out terms with our city. On December 31st of this year, the city will be in charge of taking care of Canton Street. The planters, the mulch, the beautiful planters that hang up along the light poles. I'm just getting started, but we really need to address this. This is a gem of our city. Now, if we don't get this taken care of as we go into the new year, deterioration, neglect, you name it, it's going to start to ensue. So we had a great opportunity there with the HRBP.
Thank you. Ms. Pereira?
So one of my 5 missions that I've outlined is a beautiful Roswell. I think that Roswell's visual appeal will attract and not only visitors, but also businesses. I have been rather disillusioned with the fact that Roswell didn't have too much in the budget for maintenance. If we let all of our homes go to pot, like Roswell has. So we'll have a nice shiny new penny or a nice shiny new green space, and within a year or two, it's gone to pot. I think we should do more to keep what we already have, so that when we have new projects, they remain shining along with the old projects that are continually updated.
Thank you. Mr. Sells.
You know, there was a big controversy about closing Canton Street just recently. There was a Wall Street Journal article talking about these kinds of things about 2 weeks ago, talking about who wins when you close a street like that to traffic. And the resounding answer was that the landlords are the ones who most win, more than anyone else, which I thought was very interesting. You know, there's a lot of things about Canton Street that are so exciting and bring people from all over our region. Most of you guys know that on any given night, 50% of the people there or more are not there very long. And not only that, they don't stay very long. The typical stay is like 2 hours, whereas in Avalon, it's more like 3. So I think Canton Street, we should make it vibrant, and part of our city's goal should be to bring attractive businesses and places like the parking lot that's going to make that much more attractive to people, because I see it as a great business opportunity for Roswell. And the taxes that we'll be able to generate from that will certainly pay for keeping it clean and keeping it vibrant.
Thank you. We're going to move now to the only question tonight that will be addressed to all of you. By far, the most common subject of questions submitted for the forum was transparency in the city's government. Do you feel that Roswell's government has a transparency problem? And if so, what concrete steps would you take to address it? I'm going to give each of you a minute and a half. The first 3 to speak will be Ms. Pereira, Mr. Sells, and Mr. Delchero. Ms. Pereira?
I do think Roswell has a transparency problem, but this word, I think, is overused, or maybe we haven't defined it yet. My belief is that Roswell has a transparency problem because Roswell doesn't have open process. This is what I've been advocating for. I applaud Roswell on all the good things that they do, but I also call them out on what I think is not in keeping with the Roswell that we know, love, and want to continue to see grow. I focus my attention on fact rather than fiction. When I call out, I make sure that it is called out based on fact. I have not seen some of my one of my opponents ever call out anything, which I think is very troubling. I think we have to be engaged, number one. I think, secondly, we have to be fair. When something is good, we need to applaud it. When something is not good, we need to make sure that it is called out. I want to use my process improvement and project management to ensure that we have processes for whether it's committees or commissions or just for Roswell in general to engage the public and the businesses in decisions going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Sells?
G.K. Chesterton says we should keep our government close enough that we can kick it in the shin. And I think this level of government is all about that. I mean, we're your neighbors. You know, I think everybody here either has or can have my cell phone number. It's on my business card. And I love that. Look, we try to be transparent, and I agree with Marissa. What do we mean by transparent? I think all of our meetings need to be open, and the minutes need to be clear. Just as I read board meetings, you never were surprised in the board meeting. There are conversations. You make sure that everybody knows everything that they're supposed to know. But everybody has to pay attention as well. So they have to show up for these meetings. We, as residents, have to show up. We expect transparency, and we need to be listening carefully when we have these meetings where they are telling us the things that we need to know about as citizens. I think engagement by us is what will bring out more transparency. I'm pleased to say that any of you are free to ask any question, probably of all of us, and I think all of us feel that way, that we want to be representing you and talking about the things that matter for Roswell, because we're going somewhere together. We are going somewhere together, and we need to be aligned on those things. From my view, I think Roswell's a great place, and I want to represent you, the Roswell neighbors, not the future Roswell neighbors that may come from somewhere else, but you guys are the ones that are electing me, and that's who I'm working for.
Thank you. Mr. Delchero?
Thank you. The first part of the question is, does Roswell government have a transparency problem? The answer is absolutely yes. There's been profound ethical shortcomings happening here at Roswell City Hall. And we made front page news, if you look right here, on the AJC. $250,000 spent for expensive consultants forced through the system without public review. We also wasted thousands of dollars, just south of $40,000, to go ahead and buy barriers for a promenade on Canton Street without even having that public discussion and also having this conversation with local business owners and residents. We have massive turnover here at City Hall. The last time I checked, since January 1st of last year, 36 people have left City Hall and our local nonprofits, including CFO and our purchasing director. My background is primarily HR and recruiting. Those are red flags. And now we're talking about this possibility about, we're asking if transparency is a problem. Absolutely there is. One of the hallmarks of my focus is that I want our residents to have access to all information that's readily available to them. And that includes like how they fine-tune the ORR policies and sunshine laws that are being handled today. Thank you.
The next three speakers will be Mr. Miller, Ms. Beeson, and Ms. Coates. Mr. Miller?
Does Roswell have a transparency problem? I'll say our biggest challenge is a perception problem. I do like the direction the city's headed in the most recent years with making our city council meetings available online, with making the transcripts available online and making those easy for us to get to, all the way through committee meetings as well. I think what our the challenge with that is really communicating to our residents that it's really there and how to go find that information and how to access that information and how to consume it. There's a lot of good details if you could read the transcripts, which I love to do, especially of city council meetings. That's everything you want to know about the city for the most part's in there. I do understand there are real estate and some personnel related issues that we're not allowed to know about as the general public because that could affect certain decisions that are made. But I do, going back, I do appreciate the direction that the city has began moving in the transparency arena. But I do think it comes down to more of a communication issue and how we as a city communicate that transparency, the transparency options available to our residents. I think we would be very well as city council if we each took time and actually had town halls with you and actually discussed what's on your mind and actually spent time with you on a one-on-one basis on a more collective environment where we can discuss hot topics and things that are present of mind for you as they happen to you. Having that communication will help improve transparency between us immensely. Thank you.
Ms. Beeson?
If I'm being entirely honest, yes. As what I often feel like the outsider on council, I realize I'm the new kid at City Hall. There have been times that I've been left off of city business emails within mayor and council, and I'm the only council member who was not included on those emails. And when I gave the benefit of the doubt of why I wasn't included, oh, you're new, I kind of forgot you were on council, out of habit, I was told directly to my face that I knew exactly where you stood on the issue, and then therefore I shouldn't have been included in that communication. When I'm having to file open records request as a sitting council member so that I can figure out exactly what is going on inside this building, to me that is a massive red flag. In terms of what concrete steps I've done to address it, back in February when the city had a policy that was changed by mayor and council to limit the public's access to open records requests, which are stipulated by Georgia's sunshine laws, not only did I fight back, I actually left the dais and I took that stand right there and I presented letters that were provided to us by the Attorney General's office from the state of Georgia asking why we were not following their policies in place. In terms of ways that I try to be accessible to folks, I'm the only council member who has consistently held coffee with the council member events every single quarter since I was elected last year so that folks can come and talk to me. We can have open discussions and we can chat. And ways that I'd like to continue to improve upon this if moving forward, I'm gonna be honest, I want to dissolve the Ethics Commission. You can look at the list of Ethics Commission members and see exactly who donated to whom, who is married to whom, and know that there is no way in the world that those folks can be not biased if they were challenged. So I went outside counsel with attorneys. Thank you.
Ms. Coates?
Absolutely. I think I'm on the record for talking about transparency, and I did that at an open mic night where the mayor was absent and told me later that he didn't even bother to watch that meeting. When we have secret seer contracts for $250,000 of our money, and my opponent is a finance liaison, and that article drops, and she's out to dinner that evening with that consultant, it shows me that it flies in the face of all of us that it's not a concern. And, you know, we can sit here and you can tout the millage rate, but you're not being honest when you're not bringing up the fact that taxes on businesses have more than doubled. And so our taxes are going up because of the bonds. And so we definitely have a transparency issue based on all the other things that the other people mentioned as well. What would I do to change that? I want to roll back the changes to the filing open records requests. I think that we should be making it easier to be involved with our government and understand what's happening. I would like an ethics committee overhaul, clearly define the purpose and objectives, and make the appointments of committee members through a transparent and non-political process. When you have active council candidates with spouses on that ethics committee, it's a problem. And then I would also like to encourage more civic engagement so that we can start to see as citizens that what is happening within our government. That means allow streaming of commission meetings. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The last three candidates to answer will be Ms. Hall, Mr. Johnson, and Ms. Terryberry. Ms. Hall?
Thank you. And I like what Jason Miller said. The city has a perception problem. One of the first things that we did when I was installed was brought back written minutes that were taken away by prior council. We have invited press and public to our retreats. The city is making efforts to engage the public like never before. We have quarterly strategic plan meetings that the public, they're open meetings, public and press are invited to. Over the budget process, as we concluded the budget process, I made an announcement that for those that are interested for the next budget year, we're going to have open budget meetings. So we don't have other council members there, so we don't have a quorum issue, so public can join and sit in and listen through the budget meetings. As far as contracts, the city has always brought on consultants through the same process to augment staff. These are contracts for attorneys, title companies, appraisers, audits, and other functions. There's a budget line item for the city administrator in that area. These contracts are signed by the city administrator and underneath his purview. So if the AJC, the infamous AJC article, if you read through the end, there was nothing improper done. It was all done in accordance with the law.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you. The first thing the government should do is be fiscally responsible with your money. The second thing they should do is be open how they're spending your money. Our current, or most of our current elected officials aren't doing that. Spending thousands of dollars on blockades for Canton Street before even talking to the businesses about closing Canton Street, it's inappropriate. This $1 million contract with a consultant that none of us know about is inappropriate. Councilman Beeson can't even get the contract. I don't know if she has it yet. She's an elected official, and she cannot get a copy of the SEER contract. That's unacceptable for this government, right? When we have a sitting council member fighting, their own government to get contracts and get evidence, about what's going on in city finances, and they can't get it, we can't have that. So what steps would I take? Well, number one, I would send the contract to Councilwoman Beeson. Number two, I won't use personal email to do city business. And number three, I would talk to our business owners before closing down the most major commercial corridor in our city.
Terryberry?
Thank you. So I believe transparency is the buzzword that elicits a feeling in people. We have an absolute problem when it comes to communication, feedback loop, inclusion, and approach. It is critically important as a leader when you are being the steward of someone else's money, someone else's livelihood, someone else's future, that they are included up front and in the beginning. And I hope that has been apparent in every answer that I have given on every topic. The job and role of leaders in positions like these are to push forward and drive results for the will of the people. And so the steps that I would take in those areas would be very similar to how businesses operate. When we acquire a new company, we bring them in, we assess and understand what they're thinking. We understand and identify the gaps. What are the problems? Why is it a problem? And what is the process that we are going to put in place to ensure that not only do our residents have a voice, is there a system of accountability, but there is an ongoing way that we measure that and we ensure that we are moving the needle in the right direction all the time. So transparency is a must and a requirement, and we do have problems in this area that we absolutely have to come together, and it starts with communication. And as I hope you have seen tonight, that is a critical element of how we are going to fix all of the issues and items that we need to address in this city.
We're going to move to the second most popular topic in the emailed questions. This will be a 1.5-minute question for the candidates for Post 2 and Post 1. This has been touched on tonight. There's been a lot of controversy over the potential closing of the end of Canton Street to limit its use as a major thoroughfare and create a more pedestrian-friendly environment in the area nearest the main intersection across from City Hall. Where do you stand on this issue, and what will you do as an elected representative to ensure that this idea is evaluated fairly and completely with due consideration to all constituents? We'll start with Mr. Sells.
I dealt with that a little bit in the last question. But, you know, as I said, that Wall Street Journal article talked about this. It was interesting, since I have a little more time. The thing that it found was what the landlord got out of it was free floor space. That's what they get. And the citizens, we lose parking, we lose access to the street. The businesses have to fund space that they may or may not be able to use, depending on the weather, those kinds of things. But, you know, it is very, very enticing and fun and enjoyable, and we should look at that because it's a great, we live in the South, the weather's great. We have the opportunity. We draw people from out of town, those from outside of Roswell. Those are temporary taxpayers. We should be all about that. But it's got to be done correctly. It needs to be thought through clearly, and it needs to be part of a plan to drive that business. So it should be an announcement. It should be well publicized. I think that the businesses that have the stake in that are clearly going to have strong opinions about how we do that and when we do that. If it's a full-time and permanent change, we have to have parking deck first before we can do that. So I would say that for me personally, I think it's a very, very attractive idea for Roswell, and we should do it correctly, take our time, and do it.
Mr. Delchero?
So as I mentioned earlier on, the proposal to go ahead and close Canton Street was rolled out on Facebook. It was rolled out on Facebook on April 26, 2023. Go ahead and scroll to City of Roswell Facebook page to check that out. And there was a huge uproar all about it. I've attended every single meeting that was held in the public with mayor and representatives of council throughout the course of those several weeks and months past that date, as well as all the task force meetings. And it was clear. The task force on their second meeting, they opened it up, and these residents who were willing to put in their time and treasure to do this, they said, we can't do anything for you. There's no plan. There is no plan. So why, you wasted just everyone's time. Here we are, it's election season. You don't hear anything from City Hall about this. It's like crickets. Absolute crickets. They buried that story. And that's unacceptable because you burnt resources of the residents and the business owners and the civic organizations, you name it, to cobble together with this half-baked idea. That is absolutely unacceptable. And then we are told in a 12-minute apology video, a week after the public uproar, they're walking around that we want to do this. And then there's laughing from one of our council members sitting up here that it's just a trial period, crying out loud.
Thank you, Mr. Delchero. Ms. Pereira?
So I don't have any skin in the game with Canton Street. I don't own a business on there, nor do I live anywhere close to Canton Street. But how this all came about is the absence of project management 101. Anybody that has ever done project management knows that you follow a certain script. You see in order to get to your goal, you have to have certain steps and procedures that precede the goal. In this case, none of those steps were taken. An arbitrary decision was made, and though it was maintained that it was a temporary situation, it was still a temporary decision that should have involved the public, whether it be business or the residents of Canton Street. On RTAC, this was a transportation issue. When we were on RTAC, we should have got that topic if they were indeed considering closing that street. We never got that. So again, I go back to my background in process improvement and project management. Guess what I would do? I would make sure that all the facts and all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted. The city didn't even consider getting an opinion from the police to see what ramifications this would have, closing down the street. So I think there's major opportunities in terms of process improvement, project management, and transparency.
Thank you. Ms. Beeson.
So I got to witness all of this firsthand. And by witness this firsthand, I mean that exactly 9 days before the public found out, that's when I was brought into the loop about this process, that we were proposing the closure of Canton Street for pedestrianized area. First and foremost, I do support pedestrianized areas. I like the idea, the sense of community they can create, as long as they are planned and they are implemented with community support and having feedback. Talking about 101, when you're doing city planning 101, community engagement is key. And that was a process that we skipped here. We skipped a process of being able to have input from the staff of how this would go to create a concrete plan. We skipped several steps in terms of reaching out to the businesses and making sure they were on board. For those who don't know, when you skip 5 steps, do you know what you wind up with? A broken leg because you fell down a stairwell. In this situation, the city as a whole fell down a stairwell, and we watched it play out firsthand. A point of frustration for me, though, and this actually was one of those emails that I referenced before, where there were conversations going on behind the scenes about having this whole policy and being able to implement this promenade that I wasn't looped into until the last minute. I was the council member who brought forward and made sure it was added to a public meeting so it could be discussed in the open. I was the council member who reached out to the businesses to be able to make sure we got feedback. And I did abstain when we created the task force because that entire process was done in closure. So you actually don't know who we discussed to be on that task force and who was rolled out. That was an entirely frustrating process for me, but it's also not something I don't think that we can revisit at a later date, possibly when we have parking and once we have community feedback.
Miller.
Canton Street closure, that's quite the hot topic around the area lately. This gets me, actually, I think it's certainly a viable opportunity, but it gets me back to my last point I just made. We do a terrible job of communicating ideas and planning and communicating with our residents and those stakeholders involved in that closure. I will, however, point out that my opponent, although she stated what she said a second ago, was one of the ones that actually got to order the barriers and spend our $50,000 preemptively before there was any plan. So as far as what I would have done differently and what would happen going forward is actually visit with the stakeholders. I don't know that the plan is going to be that viable and we're going to get a lot of buy-in from the business owners and the stakeholders involved because we blew it to begin with. It's going to take a lot of effort for us to reach back out to these stakeholders and get them involved in this process so that we can actually figure out a proper plan. Whether that's to do it or not, we need to plan together as a whole community on what the best process is for that area. Thank you.
The next question is a 90-second question for the candidates for post 4 and post 3. As a city council member, will you need to follow the mayor's lead on issues? Please explain why or why not. We'll start with Ms. Terryberry.
Thank you. I do not follow anybody's lead on anything. I am the epitome of an independent thinker in every way. The side of any issue that I will be on is the side based on the facts, the data, the feasibility studies, the cost, and most importantly, the feedback and input from the residents and the people impacted. I've been Homeowners Association president, getting ready to start my 5th year in my community. And through that time, we have worked through some tremendously challenging and polarizing issues. And just like I do at work every day, quite frankly. And what I have found is that the skill set to bring people together and to be able to drive results is the most important and critical skill that we have as leaders. And so I just want to emphasize that fact-based decision-making based on analysis, data, that is what I do for 25,000 clients, 3,000 executive stakeholders across our business. We take all of those really complex things and we prioritize across a massive set of strategic plans and goals. And then we break it into bite-sized pieces that we can get buy-in from the people who it's going to impact to champion it moving forward and to drive outcomes and results. And that's how you get things done.
Mr. Johnson?
Can you update the slide?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah. I'm the only one in this in my race that's come to City Hall and spoken up against the mayor. So I will follow his lead when it's the betterment for our city, and I won't follow his lead when it's not the betterment for our city. Paying our police officers the best in Roswell, that's a good thing. I'll follow that lead. Shutting down Canton Street, that's not a good thing. I will not follow that lead. So it depends on the issue, obviously, but I'm the only one who's come here in my race and spoken up on numerous issues for numerous years affecting my community and not following the lead of this mayor, the previous mayor, or the previous mayor that was sitting over there earlier. Thank you.
Ms. Hall.
Thank you. So we are a representative form of government. We, as council members, are here to represent you, the residents, and that's what we're doing. That's what I have been doing for the last 4 years. As far as the mayor sets the agenda. The mayor doesn't vote unless there's a tie, and in this case, this mayor chooses not to vote because of the representative form of government that we're structured to have. The mayor and I are very much aligned on zoning, on housing, and several other issues. We don't agree on everything. Just a case in point, the party house ordinance that I recently brought forward, this Mayor Wilson is one that really wants to pare down our ordinances and not overgovern our residents. Basically, we have so many layers in our government, too many layers. This is an ordinance that was important to some residents, to many residents actually, and through a lot of conversation, we were able to come to an agreement and basically add an ordinance. So that's my relationship with the mayor and has been for the last 2 years.
Thank you. Ms. Coates?
Absolutely. So our city charter states that we are supposed to be a weak mayor, strong council system. That's been changing recently, the last 2 years and under this administration, where it's consolidating power at the top with multiple hires of a COO. We now have a chief of staff. There's things like that that are happening. And that goes against our city charter. Also, my opponent has voted 100% of the time in alignment with the mayor. That tells me that's not independent thought. That's just doing whatever you're being told on how to vote. And I will take each vote and listen to what the people have to say, not just the ones that vote for me, but all socioeconomic levels, all people that live in housing, regardless if they're homeowners or not, and take that into consideration to make my decision and my vote, and not just do the mayor's bidding on what he says to do.
All right, we have 2 questions left. First is a 1-minute question for post 1 and 4. Numerous at-large voting systems, that is, jurisdictions that allow all voters to vote for all positions, rather than breaking down elections geographically, have been struck down under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act since its passage in 1965. Although at-large voting is becoming less common, Roswell still uses this system. What is your position on Roswell switching from an all at-large city council system to a district-based system? We'll start with Mr. Miller.
You know, I wouldn't mind pursuing that idea at some point down the road. I do think that of the size of our city with 100,000 residents, it could do us some good to actually represent certain parts of our city and break that down so that we are representing who we are, where we're from, and what part of town we're in. I do like the collective aspect of it. It does force us all as council members to communicate with all of the residents and to really take everybody's viewpoint into consideration before a decision's made. However, I think it does, I think you can tell a little bit in our development and how things have transpired. A little concentration maybe where it was not, or a little attention to the east would have been helpful with some city council candidates. I think things could have perhaps been different. I don't know that. But I would be open to exploring that as an option to ensure that each area of the city is equally represented. Thank you.
Ms. Beeson?
I'm in full support of going to a district-based city system. I would like to have 4 quadrants that represents north, south, east, and west of Roswell, and then we would have 2 at-large positions that would be able to have more well-rounded representation. I'll tell you right now, we don't have East Roswell representation on council. That's a point of frustration for many. That's why I had all of my coffee with the council member events in East Roswell so that folks there could feel like they had an ear or the ability to have a voice in their city government. I would like to yield some of my time, though, to go back to a previous question. My opponent had mentioned that I had authorized ordering barriers. So it actually was out of a conversation. That was something that was never publicly discussed. We never went through the same procurement process where you would have council members authorize it. So I gotta ask, who's writing your talking points? Because there's literally no way that anybody from the public would be privy to anything related to those barriers other than the cost.
Mr. Johnson?
I'm 100% in support of districts. There's a couple ways we can do it. We can either, what I would like to personally do is when the mayor runs for re-election, those 3 seats with council would be district, west, central, east. Another compromise would be what Milton does, where you have to live in a certain part of the district, but the whole city votes on you. I'm okay with either one of those solutions.
Ms. Terryberry?
Yes, I have seen no data on how we would potentially slice to ensure that we have equal representation across all parts of our city. I think there are benefits and risks to at-large. Right now, we have an at-large problem within our community, which is we have rundown shopping centers, we have commercial parcels that need mixed use. We need to keep our tax dollars here to take the burden off of our residents. I hear from residents every day that are saying next year, as we start to service the bond debt, we're going to have trouble. That is a Roswell-wide issue. Our budget covers all of Roswell, and the decisions that we make impact all of Roswell right now. So there are reasonable ways, and I agree. I'm on the east side. I think that it is very important, but I am very open-minded. I'm not running because I have a project in my own community that sparked interest, and that's why I'm here, or just for the east side. We need to represent all of Roswell, and there's a way we could do that, districted or at large.
The final question of the night is a 1-minute question to the candidates for post 2 and 3. We've addressed this briefly, but this is more directly on point. Do you think employee turnover is an issue within the city's government? And if so, what's causing it, and what would you do to fix it? We'll start with Ms. Pereira.
I do think turnover is a concern. It depends on the volume, and quite frankly, I don't know what the circumstances are. Is it because, like I said previously, I base my decisions on fact. So I would like to see what the circumstances were. Are they moving within the city government to another position? Are they moving to a better opportunity that helps their family or themselves? So I would love to have an open discussion to get to the bottom of it. But I cannot unilaterally just yet say that it is a concern or not a concern.
Mr. Alchero.
Good question. I alluded to this maybe not more than maybe 15, 20 minutes ago about the turnover here in our city. I've built high-performing teams all throughout the world. My recruiting background goes back to 1998, having hired for Microsoft, Accenture, and a Big Four. working across North America and Europe. What we have here in Hill Street is an issue. There's a cultural issue. When people have spent their personal time and academics to do what they love to do, and there's like just a spike in turnover at City Hall, that raises big flags. And I will go there. We did see a resignation from City Council member Peter Vanstrom not too long ago. I've tried to reach out to him. I haven't heard back. I would certainly like to know more in terms of like what led to his change and such sudden, short notice all of a sudden. That's a big red flag.
Mr. Sells?
There's a guy named Jack Welch who also knows something about building world-class teams. He built GE back in the day to one of the largest companies ever. He always tried to focus on, he would try to have at least 10% turnover every year. And the reason is because you need fresh blood. You need people that are so attractive that they are poached off by other employers, like the finance director who took a job in another city because it was attractive. I don't know that 5% change in Roswell governments here at Hill Street is a problem. I don't have the data to prove that it is. But I do think that it's important that we have fresh blood that comes in, that we are hiring the best, that we have a certain amount of people who we say, you know, your destiny may not be here. That is the way it works. If we're going to run a vibrant, large business, which is what this is, we absolutely need turnover, and I have always seen to it that we're bringing new people in all the time.
Ms. Coates?
Absolutely. I do think that the high number of vacancies that we've seen recently, the amount of turnover is concerning to me. You know, I don't know the ins and outs of all the different reasons for each one, but if we can reference some of the emails that have been sent berating them or partner organizations, or the SEER contract resignation, the resignation letter that was in the AJC article that references potentially illicit and unethical behavior on the part of the city, I think that that's extremely concerning. What can be done? Fresh new blood, somebody that's not going to be putting up with that will call out that kind of thing and make sure that everybody feels valued under this roof and throughout the city.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
Thank you. Working with the city and in my primary job, other organizations of a similar size, we're pretty standard in turnover. Turnover is always expensive for any organization because of the training. Our workforce has changed since COVID. Things have changed. People want to have opportunities where they work at home for 3 days and only come in for a couple of days. So the city is not unique in having to deal with situations like that. Also, the city has been reorganizing and reinventing City Hall. One of the things they're doing is getting rid of the silos and offering people opportunities to have some more broad sideways movement so that they can broaden their experience and move up the ladder. We had a very limited growth opportunity. And let me just correct, it was the director of finance, not the CFO, that resigned. He has a really great opportunity, young man in his 40s with a larger organization, and we've upgraded that position to CFO.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. That's it for our substantive questions. Thank you all so much for your thoughtful responses in short amounts of time tonight. We're going to move to our closing statements. I apologize to those of you who submitted questions tonight. As you saw, it was quite a tight window. So what I'm going to do is, as I mentioned, I believe, before we began, and as I told you before you came up here, if you would like to use one of your 2 minutes to talk about an issue that hasn't been sufficiently addressed, feel free to do that. I'm going to read the 2 questions that we got tonight. Don't feel obligated to address them, but they are 2 questions that were submitted that weren't addressed. The first is that there are over 1,000 Airbnbs in Roswell. They are totally unregulated and pay no occupancy taxes or sales taxes. How would you propose a way to harness the untapped revenue so that we could use additional funds to promote economic development? The second is, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing Roswell in the next couple of years? As I said, you have 2 minutes each. The first 3 speakers will be Mr. Johnson, Ms. Terberry, and Mr. Sells.
Last week, our mayor stated in the State of the City address that there is a focus on speed and quality in our quality of life issues in our neighborhoods. This is just empty lip service from our mayor. I've been here begging our city for years to improve the pedestrian safety of my neighborhood and many of your neighborhoods, and yet it falls on deaf ears. In fact, they believe that the lives of our children and your grandchildren are not worth their political capital. I find that unacceptable. It's the same lip service that our city officials give, our elected officials give when supporting our businesses, right? They say they support our businesses, but yet they close Canton Street, they raise business taxes, and they attack and shut down businesses at their grand openings. My opponent mentioned that I was quoted in the AJC. I've been quoted in the AJC numerous times because this isn't my second or third time at City Hall. I've been here for years. Since I moved here in 2014, the very first meeting I went to was at the Riverside Master Plan with learning about how our Riverside Parks are going to be improved. I've been active in my community, been active at City Hall for many years. If you want a city government full of empty words, I'm not your candidate. I'm the only candidate that's come to City Hall to fight for their neighbors, and I will fight for you to make sure that our city is run with transparency and ethical guidelines. I'm David Johnson. It'll be a privilege if you would vote for me on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Terryberry?
Yes, so safety and sustainability are key and critical to the future of our city. Safety is top of mind for all of us. There's a very distinct 2019 plan that was developed for pedestrian and bike safety. There are children in our community that walk to school on public roads every single day that don't have sidewalks to walk on. My opponent has been at City Hall to talk about sidewalks for his community on numerous occasions. He's talked about chickens on golf courses where he plays golf on numerous occasions. And while he was here doing that, I was working leading multi-million-dollar companies and driving strategy and outcomes and managing and leading people and collaborating and driving real results. And there is a big picture of prioritization and financial stewardship that is absolutely important, that we have the people on council that have the skill set and the ability and the time. I waited until my child left for college to do this because I wanted to be able to give this morning, night, and weekends, times when I am not working and my job is challenging and I put a lot of time in, but I've carted my little boy around the country. He's the captain of his travel ice hockey team here, playing out of the cooler for the last 9 years. And I have spent a lot of time soul searching on what my next step was. And I have, as I said, no special donors, no self-interest projects, nothing specific to my community, even though I have been at City Hall numerous times and I have rallied all of the surrounding HOAs in my area and coordinated the effort for us to go against high zoning or increased density in the areas surrounding us, to fight stormwater drainage issues, and to ensure that we are doing the right things to listen and take into account what is important to our residents. Listening is key, driving results is key, but leadership and experience are the key differentiators in my race, and we do need some new blood and new experience, and everyone who has ever been involved was not involved before they were involved, and my involvement started here years ago, and I give my next handful of years to this town and to make sure that we do the right things for the residents of Roswell.
Ms. Terryberry. Mr. Sells?
Thank you guys for doing this. You did a great job. Thank you. You know, I just read recently that Roswell was number 3 in livability in the Southeast. I was really pleased by that. And you know, none of those that made the top 25 were characterized by high density apartments. They were not. There are big changes coming to the economics in Roswell because of things that the DOT are doing that are not, we aren't going to have. We don't have to spend Roswell tax dollars for it to happen. Some of these things are just going to happen. They are going to build those 3 bridges. They're going to rebuild Holcomb Bridge. They're going to put the bridge across Grimes Bridge. They're going to put the bridge across Big Creek. There are big changes coming. You know, I see this a lot like I see a corporate board. Your board members are responsible for allocating capital, raising capital, and leading the company in a direction. So that's what this is about. That's what you're voting on. You're not voting on staff. We're not here to do the actual work of filling the potholes. We're here to speak for you as residents And speaking for myself, I'm not taking any PAC money. I don't represent any outside advocacy groups. I don't have a business that benefits by me being on city council. I'm just a concerned citizen who wants to see Roswell's direction stay smart, be wise. We need to grow economic development, not high-density apartments. It's that simple. Mixed use is in the code. My opponents rose and said they were against that. They wanted to stop that. They wanted to stop that change and leave high-density standalone apartments in the code. I'm against that. Vote for that or vote for the other. That's the question. So economic development will be driven in part by mixed use, for sure. But we can use that intelligently, and we can use our tools as a city to go find and bring in employers so that we're quadrupling during the day and not shrinking during the day. The workforce is here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sells.
Alan Sells.
The next three speakers will be Ms. Pereira, Ms. Beeson, and Ms. Coates. Ms. Pereira?
So today you've heard my positions on multiple fronts. I am against standalone apartments. I am for a beautiful Roswell, which will engage our visitor base as well as increase our business opportunities. I am for business, but I also advocate for transparency. One of the things that I've noticed is my opponent is for everything that has been identified by the current mayor and council. If you noticed, it was the Gateway Project, it was Grimesbridge Road, Canton Street, employee turnover. There was nothing that he contradicted. So talk is cheap, folks. It is time for us to figure out if we can have somebody who's fair and impartial, has no skin in the game, but can represent we the people. One of the things you will never have me do is something that I was put through myself within my own apartment. You will never have me advocating for something that is not in my neighborhood, but is okay to have in your neighborhood. That's called NIMBY, right? So I encourage you to do your deep dive and figure out who you want. Do you want somebody with integrity, ideas, systemic project and process management, or not? I'm running a grassroots campaign, no consultants, no big money from developers, and I would be honored to have your vote come November 7th or early on October 16th.
Thank you, Ms. Pereira. Ms. Beeson?
Thank you. So there's an old Mr. Rogers quote. He said he came from his mother in a conversation with her that in times of crisis, you always look to the helpers. Admittedly, I was never a Boy Scout, but I've always been a helper within my community. My engagement wasn't limited to whenever it was an election year. I have a long storied involvement right here in my hometown. Same place that I called home from the time I was 9 years old. My parents call home now, and I'm proud to raise my two small children here. That's why I've been frequently involved in council meetings long before I ran. I joke that I was a guest star in a regular cast of characters, so while I might not have been a regular commenter, whenever there was a topic that meant a lot to me, you would see me here, because I followed the bouncing ball here at City Hall. I served in leadership roles for organizations focused on economic development, mobility, and environmental stewardship, not only here in Roswell, but within the North Fulton region as well. Again, because I was engaged in my local community. That's why I have the support of so many small businesses, because they knew me from before. They knew when we were on Roswell Inc. together that being able to support businesses in Roswell meant so much to me that I dedicated my time well before I ever considered a run here. My community involvement, again, goes back to the way that I get to know folks here in Roswell. In the past year that I've been on council, some of the accomplishments that I'm incredibly proud of, I championed fair pay for our firefighters, so best-in-class pay. Being able to advocate for mental health support for our first responders and making sure that was budgeted for. Reduced reduced discretionary spending at the executive level by 80% because those are your tax dollars at work. And I advocated to make sure that we had access for the public by making sure that our open records request process wasn't changed. I'm asking for your vote today so that I can keep up the work that I've been doing, not only at City Hall, but within the community, but I can continue to be an advocate for you. So again, my name is Sarah Beeson, and I respectfully ask for your vote this November.
Thank you, Ms. Beeson. Ms. Coates?
Absolutely. So the last 4 years, while my opponent has been on council, the Oxbow Road debacle happened under her watch while she was the transportation liaison, and it took another council member to raise the red flag. Our taxes have more than doubled on businesses, and she's been the finance liaison. There are secret contracts happening, spending our money on we don't know what it's being spent on. And again, she's the finance liaison. So this is all happening on her watch. None of the bad behavior has been called out, and she's voted 100% of the time in line with the mayor, which again tells me no independent thought. I love this town. I'm from here. I grew up here. I came back to intentionally raise my family here because I love it so much. That's why it makes me sad to see that the trust in our elected officials has dissolved, and the business community has a great divide between it and City Hall at this point. I am going to be an advocate for change, transparency, and listening to all levels of our community, regardless of their socioeconomic level or their housing choice. I've been involved in the community for years at all levels and in various capacities, and I will be the change. I will make the difference, and you can trust me to do so and be your elected official. And I look forward to doing that and growing Roswell in the most positive of ways so that we have more sense of community, more integrity, more transparency, and more prosperity throughout all 42 square miles of this town. Thank you.
Thank you,
Vote
Ms.
for
Coates.
Lindsay Coates for council.
The last three speakers will be Ms. Hall, Mr. Miller, and Mr. Dalchero. Ms. Hall?
Thank you. For 4 years, I've been fighting for you, the residents of Roswell. I came into office in January of 2020. Oxbow had been in the works for 15 years. It was 33% complete and $15 million, way over budget. In the last 2 years, within 16 months, we spent $3 million, finished the project 6 months early. The residents have been tired of kicking the can down the road, just like the Oxbow example. I'm somebody that gets things done, and we've been getting things done. In her own words, my opponent has said she's not a stats and figures person. Well, I am. The city has a $200 million budget, and every decision has a financial consequence. In my work life, I'm a CFO with a broad financial background. These are skills I bring to City Council every day. For 4 years, I have fought to enact guardrails against high density. I took a stand and voted to retire new standalone apartments, and I stood with the residents. My opponent is on the record in favor of standalone apartments and high density in residential neighborhoods. She stood with the apartment lobby and apartment developers, outside sources telling us what we should do in our own city. For 4 years, I have fought for a safe Roswell. I have fought for a secure I fought to secure Roswell's future, and I fought to protect Roswell's taxpayers. My vision is the residents' vision, a Roswell that balances an embrace of our historic past and a bright and innovative future. I'm thankful for your support and humbly ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you very much to the Roswell Women's Club for hosting this event tonight, for the city for opening up this venue for us to have this opportunity to speak to you. I appreciate that very much for everyone. I want to loop back to two things real quick and take a little bit of time out of my closing to tie up a few points for my opponent had a question about. One was regarding the barrier and the barriers that we spent on Canton Street and the dollar amount anywhere from $36,000 to $50,000. So I want to make that clear that I was generalizing that as being part of the council that's created this problem, and she seems to be part of the same problem that continues to spend money without being fully transparent with voters. The second thing I want to touch base and clarify is the $250,000 contract that was part of the fiscal year 2024 budget It came over as a zero-based budget and as a balance forward. My opponent voted for that budget twice and also approved the budget amendment to reallocate that dollar spend to where it was supposed to go. As far as my commitment to the city, I tell you what, I took the first shot I had to get involved and actually make a change for the better for the city, because I saw that I have the skill set to make these changes and drive us in the direction we all want to go. I'm all in for Roswell. I moved my family here. I've moved my business here. I grew it here. Gosh, I can't tell you. I moved here for much the same reason as you all did. As soon as I got here, I fell in love with it, and I can't imagine Roswell any unlike it is now. I certainly don't want us to be the next Sandy Springs as Atlanta continues paving its way north. I do not want to see us succumb to that. I know we have the opportunity to prevent that. And there are a lot of people that live in Roswell. There are almost 100,000 of us, and from all walks of life, from all over this planet. And I'm anxious to represent each and every one of us because we do have such a diverse community. That makes me proud. I'm excited to represent everyone in Roswell. I'm proud to offer my 27 years of business experience building those relationships and building those contacts and building coalescence around the ideas that I want to achieve. I don't want to be the subject of a doctoral dissertation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Delchero?
Well, thank you all for being here this evening. We're a little bit past 9 o'clock, so I appreciate your patience and grace for being here tonight. I want to spend like the first portion of my closing remarks to, if I can, address with all due respect, I think more of a direct attack. And despite his attempts to distract Mr. Alan Sells, he's the only candidate who lives in high-density living. I also want to point out that I'm very disappointed in the personal conduct of some of the candidates running for this office in this cycle. We have candidates stoking lies, how we want to put apartments everywhere. That's a lie. When I spoke up at the city council meeting, the motion was about trying to take apartments and townhomes out of the code. So I'm not for old, antiquated, standalone apartments. What I am for is smart work, live, play options here in our city, in the right places. I just mentioned about a good 1 hour ago how we had an opportunity to do something that everyone's pointing at old Milton about how great Avalon could be if it was over here. Maybe smaller scale, but sure. So I do want to point that out. I also want to point to contrast about my campaign. It's not going to be more of the same. This election has 4 openings on the ballot. And you have candidates up here who don't really seem to condemn or speak up around transparency and this anti-business culture. Who will? Do you want change? Are you ready for a referendum for our city? I've been to more meetings than any other council member candidate up here on this dais. I'll be ready day one, and I speak my mind. Thank you all for being here. Bye-bye.
That's all we have for you tonight. To the candidates, thank you so much for being here. Again, I have no dog in this fight, but it takes courage to run, and just discussing the issues is a service. So please join me in giving them a round of applause. Very quickly, I want to thank the city personnel who made this happen, the audiovisual people, the people who let us in the building and maintain the space, and the officers who are here for our safety tonight. Thanks again to the Roswell Women's Club, Sherry Broadway, President, Rosalind Dominic, Committee Chair, Karen Bearden and Sharon Schiffer, our timers tonight. Gail Horton, our timers tonight, and Sharon Schiffer, co-chair of the committee. One more time, the registration deadline for this election is October 10th. The early voting window is October 16th to November 3rd, and Election Day is November 7th. Please continue this conversation. Get your friends involved. We have 20 minutes in the building. So,
Tyler, will you add the early voting locations? The early voting locations, if you want to mention those, the two early voting locations.
Oh, sure.
East Roswell Library and West Roswell Library.
The 2 libraries are the early voting locations. The candidates have the option to go to the rotunda to speak with you if you'd like to do that. Thank you.